going to start our evening here at 7 o'clock with our workshop, at which point it's until 7:30, and at which point we'll start with our regular agenda. And so as far as workshop, we have a couple of things to discuss, which Jennifer will walk us through, and if I can find my notes and all of my other notes. We've got a few things to discuss. There are a few local laws, I think 3 draft local laws we want to touch on. And then was one of the laws relative to the concept plan on 248 or
sort of? I mean,
germane?
It deals with the Fishkill Creek Development District, so it's tangentially related, but
okay,
independent also.
Great. Is that so? Do we want to start with that, the Fishkill Creek development piece?
We could. I was going to do the opposite,
Let's do whatever you like.
but we can start there, whichever one.
No. That's. I don't want to mess up your rhythm.
It's fine. I don't know if it's rhythm. I don't know if I'd call it rhythm, but. All right, so there are a few referrals from the City Council on tonight's agenda. So as we tend to do, sometimes taking up the workshop portion of the meeting to start our discussion of the referrals. And then when we get to those miscellaneous business items, we can solidify your comments back to the City Council. On each of these matters that have been referred, they do have a public hearing scheduled for the 19th, so next Monday. So the City Council is requesting your comments back tonight instead of waiting till your next meeting. So with that, I will start with the local law that's proposed to amend chapters 190 and 223 concerning soil stabilization. So this is a measure that the council requested that we put forward. This is to encourage green building practices and reduce the environmental impacts of construction generally. And what's being proposed is that the erosion and sediment control practices used on a construction site for soil stabilization practices, or soil stabilization purposes, so netting, slope stabilization. Thank you, and John, please chime in whenever I'm misspeaking or to elaborate further. The requirement in the code will be that has to be natural fibers, so no plastics, no vinyl, nothing like that. It has to be natural fibers. This doesn't include silt fencing, so the plastic silt fencing that you see around the limits of disturbance, that will be allowed to be plastic. That's a temporary measure that'll be taken down. But soil stabilization and slope stabilization practices will have to be made of natural fibers. There is a relief valve provided for in the code. It's natural fibers unless otherwise approved by the stormwater management officer. Yours truly, Mr. Russo here.
No.
No?
No.
So,
actually, the highway superintendent.
The highway superintendent. So unless otherwise approved by the stormwater management officer, the applicable municipal board, so whoever the approval authority is for that particular project, or unless otherwise required by DEC. As John can probably describe a little better than I can, there are some practices by DEC that are required to be.
Right, they have certain properties that they require for certain materials. One of them being silt fence. They have physical properties that they've listed for silt fence, and that's one reason why we're sticking with what you see out there, the black silt fence.
Mm-hmm.
So they do make a silt fence that is 100% biodegradable, but I've never seen it used in New York itself. I don't think it complies.
So it doesn't actually do the job that it's intended to do.
It may not meet the DEC's requirements, right?
Right.
There's like an ASTM or some other agency that has performance requirements.
Well, basically, the concern was the slope stabilization fabric, with the plastics, it was degradable, but you broke down to microplastics.
Yeah.
So the intent is to go to 100% biodegradable all-natural fabrics.
Don't see anything wrong with that.
Which has been out there for years for slope stabilization, so.
Do we need to make a distinction between temporary soil stabilization and like permanent, that's below grade?
It
and-
won't matter which they're using it for.
So
If
both.
they
What's
the
decide
requirement to
to
use
use
for both?
matting for temporary,
Right.
it still has to be the 100% biodegradable.
But what, for instance, I don't know the technical terms, but when you're stabilizing a slope with like below grade, there are,
Below?
like channels, like to hold a slope, like if you're, no,
Not ringing a bell?
ringing a bell.
Not ringing a bell
Let me
to
pull
me.
something up. I just want to make sure that, like, I'm totally on board with what they're going. I just want to make sure that there's not, like, an area of,
You mean when you get rills because of water running underneath it?
yeah, or just the whole slope itself going, like,
Oh,
sliding.
the whole slope
Yeah.
sliding. Okay, yeah, well, that's different than just the matting, because usually slope stabilization, yes, there's different parts of it. Usually this is just looking at the erosion control to make sure that you're not having the surface of this slope slide down. Yeah, you're not looking at a failure of a slope, which may require soil nailing, or some other methods being employed to actually anchor the whole slope. Here, it's just making sure the surface is not going anywhere. And it doesn't even have to be this, it could actually, so any slopes greater than 3-on-1, DEC requires now slope stabilization through matting, where before it could be tackifier and, I can't even think of it, hydroseeding. So they've kind of restricted, and they've seen that too many slopes have failed, and surfaces have failed on these slopes over a certain pitch. So the concern with the council and some others is that, you know, we're using plastics that, yes, degradable, but they're breaking down the microplastics, which are getting into the water, so.
And the fencing is intended to be removable, right?
Yes, the fencing is removed
Completion of
after the site is
construction.
stabilized, the fencing is removed.
Yeah, and is there any requirement to recycle that material?
No. There's no requirements. It's usually destroyed by the time they rip it out,
Yeah, and then it goes, whatever is destroyed and remaining goes to landfill,
wherever they take it, yeah.
unless they've decided they're going to, you know, provide some lead sustainability recycling
Right.
effort. Yeah, I mean, it's a what I would consider the right step in the right direction. I think just as a board, do you have any questions or comments, Kevin?
No, sounds like a positive proposal.
Right.
Sounds great. It sounds like it doesn't cost that much more money, and it prevents long-term environmental damage from microplastics and other things, so.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think so. Then what do we want to share back to the council that we are generally in support with no further
Then you think
comment?
it's a positive direction? then?
Yeah, yeah, we can.
I don't know if I want to get that effusive.
Control yourself.
That big word.
We're generally in support. That's all you get, council.
All right, so moving on to the next of the local laws. There's another local law that's being proposed. This is amending Chapter 223 regarding certain dimensional regulations, and this concerns attached townhomes. So in the code currently, for any RD district, when you are considering an application for attached townhomes, there's a specific note in the schedule of regulations that says that you can approve a subdivision to subdivide land into individual building lots for the purpose of attached or semi-attached single-family dwellings, i.e. townhomes, and you're allowed then to reduce the minimum lot area that would have otherwise been required for those lots under the regular RD zoning. Now, this particular provision was specific to RD districts. You recently, the Beacon recently amended the code to allow attached townhomes in the T district, the newly formed T district. However, this particular note wasn't also amended to reflect that you can have that similar flexibility in the T district to reduce the minimum lot sizes for attached townhomes. So this is kind of a local law correcting what was an oversight at the time when those T-district regulations were being put into place a
So-
year or two ago.
Got it. So
Yeah.
it currently exists in T, it doesn't in RD. This is to rectify that and to bring it to
The opposite.
opposite.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a long day. And if I read this right, this is to allow for a subdivision on lots containing a minimum of 1,800 square feet. So is the purpose of this is to be able to subdivide a lot for an accessory dwelling?
For townhomes. So
For
this is River
townhomes.
Ridge. River Ridge is an RD district. So this particular note, this particular provision was used for River Ridge to allow those individual townhomes to be on their own separate lots, but for those lot sizes to be allowed to be shrunken down to
I see.
something less than what would have otherwise been required in the RD district for like a single-family home.
Is it side yards
Detached.
as well? Because wouldn't you need the side yards to be amended, or is that already taken care of?
That is not explicitly provided for in the code. I think it's been interpreted in the past that it's just sort of, if you have attached.
Attached,
Yeah, it would automatically be a 0 side yard setback, but that may be a comment just to make it more clear in the
Because
code.
I'm thinking
Well,
the units on the end,
Yeah, you could have them right up against the property line. Wouldn't the table of the schedule of dimensional regulations prescribe? Front, side. You got side yard dimensional restrictions on all of the RDs, and the T is 10 feet. Nope,
Yep,
sorry.
so-
Yep.
Right, and then if you have attached townhomes, obviously, you're not going to have a 10-foot setback in between those individual smaller lots. So to Natalie's point, it might make sense to add something in here to allow flexibility, not just for a smaller lot size, but also a 0-foot side yard setback
Right, the
where
thinking is-
appropriate.
It's implied, I think it's just not.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, we don't
we wanna-
go on just implied. Otherwise, we're sitting here at some planning board
Either
review scratching our
We'll end up
heads.
having to interpret that.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So let's clean it up
Building
now.
inspector.
Yeah, the idea being the larger development on its site should have some, even though it's a cluster, should have
Yeah.
some relationship through setback to side and front yards.
Some of the
So-
other relationship on T district, some of it is, depends on what district it's adjacent to, right? So if it's adjacent to a commercial district, there's one set of, it references those requirements.
Yeah,
And if it's residential, I know that that was impacted one of the other T district.
so you can think of it 19
Developments.
Henrys in the T district. This would allow them to break those lots, but I still come back to the question of side setbacks.
Right.
Because you've got
Right.
the single-family homes on either
I
side.
think you could still have them on either side of the building. What we're saying is if you have 4 units in a row, the way. the
Right, where they
code
have a
reads
common
now
line.
is that they're, if they're separate lots, if each one's on a separate lot, there has to be some kind of, I think, indication that the middle units don't require the
Yes.
side yard
Right,
setback.
Yeah.
that's what I want to make
Right.
sure.
But
It's just the
still-
middle units,
Yeah.
not the end units.
Yeah.
or-
So I think we could come up with language
Yeah.
to, add that there should be flexibility to reduce side yard setbacks where appropriate. So that would allow the planning
Well-
board to have a 0 side yard setback, where there's an
To-
attached home.
to
But on
define-
the ends.
Well, that's the question. Do we want to reduce or eliminate, or at least make clear a definition for side yard setback limitations?
By definition, do you mean set the numerical value?
Or at least make the reading of it clear so that when you're looking at the schedule, that it's understood that, yes, between individual units, no, but as a larger complex,
Yeah, so this language in the local law is a note in the schedule. It's note E.
Yeah.
So it's specifically referred to in the schedule. So what we would do is attach this note E, not just to the lot area, but also the minimum yards reference.
For units that share a wall, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Common wall.
A common wall.
yeah, I'm reading note E again, and so again, it doesn't necessarily say or make clear directly.
The setback issue, right?
The
But we're
setback
saying
issue.
it would make sense to add that.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay,
Yeah.
agreed. So we'll not necessarily craft that language here for them,
But just
but we'll
suggest
make
the
the
concept.
recommendation
Yeah.
that they look at that and define such.
Right.
Otherwise, any other thoughts, Karen or Kevin, or you came in the middle?
Right. The only,
Aye.
oh, this is about, right, did you read you understand the issue? Yeah. Okay, sorry. My only concern was that we might want to look at how you, if we're defining side and rear yards for townhouse developments, right? Where each one of these in the T-zone and any RD zone where that's feasible, right? That we have it reflect the adjacent district, so that if it's a low-density residential district, there's not a zero lot line, or, there's an appropriate, a similar setback that would be required for those sorts of things, because that was, I thought, one of the, as a transition zone, right?
Yep.
That one of the intents of that was that it would vary, the developments would vary depending upon its neighbors, right?
Makes a lot of sense.
So
Right.
in
You're
a
speaking to
commercial setting,
context, yeah.
right, where if it's in a commercial zone, you can have a zero lot line or a small lot line, because you don't really need that. It's not up against somebody's residence or
Yep.
backyard.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Something we probably want, I saw you making notes.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on?
Okay.
Moving on?
Moving on. The third
cooking with
local
gas.
law that was referred relates to amendments to the Fishkill Creek Development District. Currently, in the Fishkill Creek Development District, there's a requirement that a minimum of 25% of the total development's floor area has to be non-residential. And that non-residential has to be built out either before or concurrently with the residential development on the site. What the city council is proposing to add is some flexibility to allow COs for the residential component to be issued prior to the non-residential component being completed. The applicant would have to show good cause for why that should be a waiver that's granted. Currently, this is proposed to be a city council decision. The city council specifically wanted to know from the planning board whether the planning board agrees that it should be a city council decision or whether it should be a planning board decision. So that's something I think they want to hear back from you on.
The way
And
it's
there's
written,
also
it's a city council decision.
The way it's written, it's city council, but they specifically wanted your input on whether that's the right proposal.
So the code requirement remains, this is simply modifying it to introduce a waiver
Essentially.
capability.
Yeah.
And is there reasoning behind this that they've conveyed to you?
Not that has been conveyed to me. I do think it has something to do with a current development site that's
Because
looking to occupy residential units, and I think they're, looking at it from a practical standpoint, if the residential units are ready to be occupied, why not get those, with the housing shortage, why not get those online as soon as possible?
And-
I think that's one of the arguments that's being put forth.
And we usually want to be careful about broad law, zoning changes if they're driven by individual circumstances.
Well, this would be applicable to the
It
entire
would be
district.
applicable to the whole
right?
district.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So we want to
Yeah.
be careful about this.
Yep.
Well, look, it's this, they're all a much higher pay grade than us. It's the city council, in all of their wisdom, making this decision. Yeah, so for that reason, I won't go where I wanted to go. Because I clearly don't understand the why, right? And there, if someone is describing the why as a housing shortage, I think we need to parse that a little bit into more of the conversation around a low-income housing low-income housing shortage, right? So, you know, I've got all kinds of things to say about this, but I won't say them here because it's not germane necessarily to the actual law. It's more germane to the whys, and I don't necessarily agree to the whys. But again, that's a conversation with the city council.
Jennifer, have they talked about any metrics as far as what would define a good cause?
Not that I've been told. So I don't attend the city council meetings. I don't have the direct discussions with them.
That's a really good question.
So not that I've
Because
been
good
told.
cause can be quite subjective.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, so if you define some metrics or put some metrics to it, at least you
Yeah.
can determine whether you're a good cause or not.
A lot of times what good cause ought to relate to has something to do with the underlying purpose of the law, purposes of the law at issue, which kind of brings us back to
The why.
the why. There was a when I was on the zoning board, there was a request for a variance from this requirement, and we kind of struggled with the why issue some. This requirement dated back to the creation of the, Fishkill Creek Development Zone. The only why I could come up with, looking at what was in front of me, was the desire was to make sure that this mixed-use development did in fact take place, and the concern was that, well, if we give out COs on the residential portion of this before the commercial portion is done, if the commercial portion never gets done, the city's now stuck in this position of, okay, so what do we do? Like, revoke the CO and tell everyone to move somewhere else? Well, I don't know how that's going to go down, but obviously there's going to be a lot of people who are not in favor of that. But again, like, why is it so important to ensure that FCD is being developed on this mixed-use basis in the first place?
I
Yeah. go
I
ahead.
can speak to that because I was involved with the development of the Fishkill Creek District early on. I was in the committee,
Yep.
chair of the committee, and the concern then, and it was a different city then, we had not, the development that was anticipated hadn't occurred. And there were a lot of people that at that time were anxious because they had every expectation that, that everything was going to change and they were going to make tons of money and move to Florida, and there was a lull at that time, right? And the discussions in the committee, which were not the same as the discussions that made the law, were that we wanted to have the opportunity for a mixture of commercial and residential. That originally the proposal was that it was only residential was going to be allowed there, right? The next step was to allow for commercial and residential, depending on, so that there was flexibility for the developer, and also because commercial development is beneficial. Mixtures of uses, and we found this in the way downtown works. All the mixed-use areas are higher value, they're more pleasant, they're what makes Beacon an interesting and great place. So the intent and the way that it worked out when the law was passed was to have this percentage required, right? Because it was, in the discussion, it was, as you said, if it was just sort of a suggestion, that it probably wouldn't be taken up, right, by a developer. And that having, like, on the linkage district, right, there's sort of mixed-use requirements for some of those buildings. And we found like some of those applications succeeded with mixed use when they might have been single use in the normal course of ordinary development. And I didn't feel like it limited the developers that much. It was actually a benefit because in some ways having a mixture of occupancies can be good in the business cycle and all these other things, right? There's multiple benefits to having mixed uses, is my point. So that was the intent. I felt like a couple of the projects that have been done, at least as far as what's been proposed, aren't failures. They seem to succeed, both as buildings and as part of the social fabric, I I mean, we can criticize all these things, we could all be better, you know? And so that's my input on that.
Let me throw something at you, definitely a thought I had. FCD is not a very big district. I mean, we're really just talking about a handful of lots going along Fishkill Creek down to the Hudson. I believe this is a provision in the FCD zoning law. It may also be otherwise in the Beacon zoning law, but that you can't have residential units inside the 100-year floodplain. For a certain amount of FCD, including one or two things that are already under construction or built, this kind of solves itself because that first floor on a couple of these, on several of these parcels is going to be within the 100-year floodplain.
If it's parking, it's allowed. It's for most flood control guidelines, you know. Just can't, anyway,
Yeah.
as an aside.
I'm not really sure that going to a good cause standard accomplishes anything. If the view is that this hasn't actually worked out as intended, making people jump through the hoops of like a good cause exception is probably just a waste of time. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think that good cause, to your point and to John Russo's, there needs to be some parameter put around that in terms of what this metric or the standard is for what defines good cause. And again, you know, look, I haven't been privy to all of the discussions at the city council, but it's my understanding that for a particular application currently in construction down at the creek, the desire by that applicant for quite some time was to see more residential for P&L.
And that'll come up in the next referral that we'll
Right.
discuss.
So this somewhat smacks to me of, and I'll just be blunt, certainly not spot zoning, but making a concession to a developer who, quite honestly, for quite a bit of their application, have basically run roughshod over their agreements with the city. And this particular development is a tertiary concern to the developer. They simply want to turn as much profit as they possibly can. And all of that, to me, doesn't necessarily bring us to good cause. But look, again, I thought I wasn't going to go there. This is the city council asking us to weigh in on this. And the way I then would look at it is, there are now very few remaining Fishkill Creek parcels left to be developed. I'm thinking of one large development specifically, that being the Madam Brett property. And I agree that there's a component to mixed use that adds an advantage, not just to the city, but to the actual users, right? And I wouldn't necessarily want to not thoughtfully create this clause for an out for a developer without really good reason behind it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's clear, and I think it is based on the discussion, but this particular local law doesn't eliminate.
I get that.
Yeah,
That's why I mentioned it.
Right,
It is-
it's the timing
it's a
of the
lever.
COs.
But again,
right.
it's
But it's, yeah, it's allowing,
Who has the ability to switch this lever and give the relief?
council.
as it's proposed, right now, it's the city council, but they're looking to you to weigh in on that. Does it make sense for it to be the city council, or should it be a planning board decision to have the authority to change the timing, to allow the COs for the residential to be issued before the COs for the non-residential component?
Yeah, look,
Where should that approval authority lie?
either
It's the
way,
council that concurrently has the power to eliminate non-residential as well, right?
Yes, the city council has the power in the existing code
To not
to
require-
grant, to allow for less non-residential than the 25%
Then I
up
would
to
leave it with the council.
0%.
yeah, honestly, it ultimately doesn't matter. What really matters is this idea of the good cause. And, look, I'm all for flexibility and offering applicants just that. And so therefore, you know, what they're introducing here allows for that. But I guess, again, it goes down to the good cause standard. And whether it's the city council or the planning board, and all the more reason should it be the planning board who's making that ultimate decision, we need to understand what the baseline for good cause
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So just from this particular board member, again, this is more editorializing, but I'm not necessarily sure I'm in agreement with the impetus for this law, but on its own, given that, again, we're allowing for some flexibility, I think that that's a good thing, and it, again, comes down to the definition.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
fair.
it seems to me that the issue about the non-residential use is couched in terms of office space, that, you know, that office space isn't as needed, but there's a whole lot of other commercial uses that
Yeah.
aren't office spaces that do seem to
Yeah.
have a demand in the local economy, so.
Yeah.
That's a good
I wouldn't be
point.
so quick to roll over on this.
Agree. I think you make a really good point. This idea of the ability,
There's lots of
For-
artist spaces that, you know, get filled up very
Yeah.
quickly.
the ability for job creation, right? That's absolutely needed up here, as much as low-income housing. And again, the optics of a developer being granted the ability to create even more market-rate housing, for which there is quite an abundance now, just, I don't know what the city council's thinking. That's my 2 cents.
And I'll add one thing, is that having a mixed economy where there's jobs and residences and retail in a community is environmentally beneficial because people aren't commuting as long.
Yeah.
As somebody who hates his commute as much as I do, the opportunity for more people in locally, and this is people in Fishkill and surrounding communities also, to have a more diverse economy improves the quality of life and, emissions, all these
Sure.
other things.
Yeah, no, I think about this particular development, and then the other one that I mentioned that could come to pass. The residents there having the ability to access goods and services like just a simple dry cleaner or a laundromat, as opposed to having to get in their car and go up to Main Street. It's just it's simple logic that it would make sense, and I think that was part of the logic behind the rezoning when the Fishkill Creek Corridor came into play. So it removes a part of that logic by giving this out. And again, I would really like to understand what this good cause is, because I can't think of any.
Yeah. I'm not sure how I feel about, I'm a little agnostic on the overall mandated mixed use. Like, I understand where it's coming from, but doing good cause seems to basically be just ducking the issue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of, if it still makes sense to have this as a model, then we shouldn't have this good cause exception.
Ducking the issue or
Right.
rolling over?
Right. And even if you're not that concerned about whether this is built for this particular project or whether it's built later, there's a sort of what they used to call moral hazard, right? It's like what's happening with other applicants and how they feel that it's likely to be able to not fulfill the spirit of the zoning district, you know?
Yeah. It's 7:36, regular time, 7:32 Beacon time. Do we have another? We have another.
There's another referral, but we can talk about it in the miscellaneous
to that
business
afterwards?
section with the other ones, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we did a lot of good work here. So just on that last one, do you have enough
Yeah,
to
it sounds,
prepare?
I think the overarching comment is we need to understand what is meant by good cause and kind of flesh that out a little bit,
Yeah.
and give some definition to that.
None of my editorializing? Hopefully they watch the meetings. Anyway, Welcome, everybody, to the August 2024 meeting of the City of Beacon Planning Board. First item of business, we have the approval of both our June minutes and our July minutes and entering into the record. So for June's minutes, unless there are any last-minute notes for edit, I'll accept a motion to adopt or enter June meeting minutes into the record.
Motion to adopt?
Oh, we do need a quorum. Darn it, we're going to have to do this next month. Can you do July?
I can.
All right, was everybody here in July?
I sent a comment for the July.
I was not here in July. I'm
okay.
sorry. I
Keep
had
'em on
meant
the
to tell
agenda.
you about that in advance, but I remembered shortly before 7 PM on the West Coast, and then realized the meeting was already
No worries.
over, so. yeah.
So we'll just keep them rolling for next month. See who shows
Unless
up.
if we get a quorum, oh no, this is
Randall's
the
sick.
full board, yeah.
This is
Randall's
us,
sick.
yeah.
Okay, never mind.
And then again, I don't think there are any significant actions tonight. We can authorize, yeah. So, but just obviously for any of the applicants present, knowing that we are just a simple quorum, and we're simple folk, so go easy on us. But that it shouldn't materially affect any of your applications, just to make you aware. Then, so we'll move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is the continued review of application for site plan and subdivision approval, mixed-use commercial and residential. See, mixed use, 45 Beekman Street. You're not going to ask for this provision to be, you're not lobbying for this provision, are you?
That's right. Not yet.
Mixed-use commercial and residential, 45 Beekman. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Allison Fausner. I'm Ron Burgundy. No, Taylor Pollard for the law
You've been
firm.
practicing.
I'll read anything that's on the teleprompter, I guess.
He's been practicing his stand-up. I don't know, you know how dangerous it is when attorneys start practicing stand-up.
It's all good to see you tonight. I know it's been a few months. I think it was the most in the last 8 years, so good to see you all. I am appearing tonight for the continued review of our subdivision and site plan application proposing to redevelop the premises for 2 proposed 4-story mixed-use commercial multifamily residential buildings at 45 Beekman and High Street. I am joined by R.A. Siegel, the architect, as well as Justin Dates, our and our traffic consultant, the legendary Phil Greeley of Colliers Engineering. About to say Mazer. I always have Justin Dates, Mazer Consulting. It's like programmed in my brain from projects in Newburgh in years past. With that, as was discussed at our July 30th meeting, in furtherance of our discussions with the board to date, we have submitted our formal application to purchase surplus property to the New York State DOT. That was a lengthy enclosure with our submission, but it took a lot to get there. This request was made in response to directives provided by the board, of course, and then comments from your planner, as well as the Dutchess County Planning Department, who was on referral for this application. So we did, at great expense and effort, put together some title review and information to seek the purchase of those specific properties. So through this process and working with city staff and New York State DOT, together with our consultants and our surveyor, we were able to figure out who owns what, kind of, on the right-of-ways along Beekman, nothing that we're worried about along Walcott. So through this application, we're proposing to purchase .283 acres of a certain portion of the property along Beekman Street, and then we did, sort of as a catch-all, to make sure we got everything, also include a portion that the title company says is ours, but in case there's any conflict with DOT, we added that. It's another .2456 acre, that's a nice one, 2456, portion of the property along Beekman Street. So again,
Is that the blue parcel?
maybe. Yes. Yes.
So green is the only area under this sort of transfer situation, right?
Yeah, Ari will bring it up to make sure we're talking about the right colors. Phil will also speak to those specifics, just again in the surplus DOT application. And he'll speak to, again, what right-of-way we're sort of maintaining for future use, potentially for DOT or others in that area. So as is also detailed in Collier's updated submission to your board, we did a right turn lane memorandum that involved key improvements to the overall level of service in the corridor. And then we previously highlighted some of the traffic impact study details, namely the fair share traffic signal phasing and timing improvements. So I'm focused on sort of the conclusions, and Phil will touch on sort of the majority of the findings, but it did, you know, our traffic study did find that the southbound right turn lane is not merited or necessary to mitigate against the potential impacts. So again, we've included a number of updates to the plans, but our project isn't the sort of impetus for a lot of these changes, but we've incorporated measures to ensure we don't have specific impacts. Briefly, just for some additional updates, and then REA will touch on the specific revisions to the plans and some other enclosures that you may not have seen yet, sort of teeing it up for our submission for next month, and hopefully that we'd be able to get you a full, complete visual and engineering response to sort of Mr. Russo's outstanding comments, so that you have a lot of package to digest. For this submission, we did update the roof plan for the 485 Beekman to reflect the 15-foot setback. Again, it was really dealing with the coverage issue, which we sort of tied to more of the mechanicals than it was the overall usage of the area, but we did update now, just have everything set back 15 feet. The original site plan section was updated to show our relationship with those buildings on High Street, so we did add some additional sections, which Ari will walk through. And then we do have a new site section that was developed through High Street that added a third site section that cuts along the sidewalk facing Beekman to show that relationship there as well. I think we also added a detail regarding the pedestrian clearway. And with that, I'll turn it first just to REA to kind of update you on the visuals. There's some new renderings that hopefully REA can touch on. But again, I think where we are tonight is giving you some, this submission was focused primarily on what has been sort of bogging us down, which was the DOT surplus property application. Now that that's in, we have a pretty good comfort level. This next submission is going to be very responsive to Mr. Russo's comments, and also working to have the visuals so that now we're really digesting those pieces which you all have been highlighting. We've been trying to get it there, and I think now we're in the position where you'll have those materials to kind of more fully digest as we move forward.
Can I ask you something?
Of course.
Given, and thank you, because understanding quite well that a lot of the effort up until now, and I just read through it as well, has been around the purchase of that parcel. And with the understanding that a lot of what you're currently showing, and I'm sure will continue to show, is in anticipation of that coming to pass, right? That purchase. So you're continuing to kind of build the application around that. We hope for your sake that it does, but there's no certainty that it will.
Certainly, in any project too. I mean, if we could design it in a million ways without your input, it would just be, we could spend time designing it in the lab, you know, sort of forever. Our idea is to get the building in a position or shape. Or
So, yeah,
context.
fair, you know, and
Yep.
so I'm just making that statement just as a sort of a level set to what I'm going to sort of ask. It's that the other sort of what I would call incremental updates that you have to share with us tonight, if you could make them crisp, concise, and brief,
Of course,
that would be really well appreciated.
no problem.
Because the way, I don't know, this is just me, but the way I look at this is that, number one, there's still that piece to be confirmed, right, the purchase, as sort of the keystone of the project moving forward. But there's still also a lot to be developed, right?
Right.
And so, again, having reviewed your application, what I would say about some of these updates is that they are incremental. So, again, we don't need to rehash anything that we've already discussed. There's going to be plenty of time for that and for the more exhaustive reviews and discussions.
Including ARB,
So,
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just want to sort of highlight for the board important parts of this project and why this was so extensive, the review that was done. A, was a lot of the history here, you know, urban renewal
Yeah.
and everything else. So it took a lot of digging to figure out breaks and chains of title and understand what we're working with. But more importantly, the issues that we identified as those we wanted to be sure that we addressed full bore or traffic, right? Traffic was a big piece. That's why we have the legend. Mr. Greeley here this evening to kind of speak to those things, because that was something we identified. Let's make sure we hit this hard and make sure that the board feels comfortable with. We're trying to put those issues to rest, because once we have those type of issues, we're all part of the secret process, right? The environmental review, and these are the things that are there. So we know the next stage of that is the visual, right? The impact, community character, and those details. So that's why now that we have this piece, we can put it all in and hopefully be able to fully review the seeker analysis.
Yep.
Not just these parts. But we appreciate that, and we'll bring that back to the applicant.
Thank you.
And we'll keep it concise.
So before we move on to the next, I just
Yes.
want to note, we have Ken Worstead, our
Oh,
new
I was wondering where he was.
representative from Creighton Manning. The smart board was not working, so we have Ken available via cell phone, speakerphone here. So Ken, I wanted to make sure, are you able to hear everyone clearly?
Pretty good, yes.
Okay. And when you need to speak, I will put you right up to my microphone, so you'll be amplified in the room here. So, sorry for the technical difficulties
Not only
tonight,
do
but
our-
we do have our traffic consultant.
Our
sort of
clocks
with
don't
us
work,
tonight
our
here.
seats suck, and the video's broken. Hey, welcome to Beacon.
But at least there's jokes.
Thank you for that.
Good evening. So, yeah, Taylor mentioned that we submitted updated plans, which was mainly that roof plan to, comply with setbacks on the roof deck. And then we also developed some additional site sections. We had one last time. So basically what you're looking at now is cutting the site through from up on High Street and then down, through their back property line, through our parking lot, and then through our building at two locations. One is, one cuts through the High Street building, and one cuts through the Beacon Street building. The profiles are kind of similar, but they're taken in different spots, and you can see where we are, like at the parking lot grade.
Do you have it marked anywhere on the plan?
I don't, but I will have that on there, yeah.
All right.
But it's just sort of like cut
Understood,
right
that's
through the
fine.
middle of each building. One thing to note, the residential properties are, pretty much higher than where we're sitting. And also there's a substantial tree line in the back of most of those properties that kind of screens the view of the building and the parking lot from the houses. They would sort of see more over it. There might be, little glimpses of the building, but it's not like right up in their view line. And then also we did a little bit more detail on the, looking at the streetscape improvement area. So some of that dimension varies, but essentially, we're showing the street transition zone, the clearway, the building transition zone, and in most of it, the dimension does vary. In most of it, we could keep the that pedestrian clearway at 8 feet consistently, and then the choice is either reduce the building transition zone slightly, basically flip those dimensions, or try to push the building back, but that leads to other issues with, how we did retaining walls and stuff like that. But there's some flexibility there, so we can get that to work. And then the other thing is we have that, that arcade that is now extending along the entire perimeter of the building, that whole L shape. And when I show you the building design updates, you'll see that that's a lot more open now as well. But, so at some point we should sort of figure out the board's desire on that one, if we want to sort of flip those dimensions or try to get some additional flexibility somehow. So the other thing we did, we updated the building design more. These are just sketchy from my SketchUp thing, but the whole bottom of the building where the arcade is, and at the corner opened up. The corner is entirely open. That tower is sort of supported on columns now. Those brick portions to either side of that are now open, because I know we talked about that. And then there's a lot more, glass in the building that sort of works with the brick that's around it and the brick on the arcade. And
Is
sort
this-
of ties in the tower to the glass above the bays.
Is this in the package or?
No.
Okay. Do you mind if I?
Yeah, this is just to give you a little preview of where we're going with that. But you can see it's a lot more open, because we were talking about how the pedestrian relationship to the corner. Now the commercial storefront entrances are also in that corner. That came up as a comment as well, so we're looking at doing that. And then you can see how that corner's opened up. We're still looking at how to do that, but that's sort of the idea, to get that working a little bit more with, how we were talking about at the last meeting, so the pedestrians have a better relationship to the building. And that's just so you get an idea of the massing and the texture of it. But but we're going to start going into the photorealistic renderings and getting some of that stuff locked in, so we can look at it along with the ARB subcommittee.
You want feedback now?
No, I mean, I think once we
Really?
get to the
That's all right, go ahead.
no, I mean, you guys haven't had a chance to really
Yeah.
get a look at that, but
Well, suffice it to say, you'll spend some time with the ARB. And look, I appreciate you acknowledging some of the comments that we made, because I was pretty windy last month about how this building interacts with the street. And, just understanding that this is a really new dynamic for that corner.
right.
It could be perceived as a just giant wall right up against the street on two sides. It still has that heavy foreboding feeling at the street level. I understand there's an arcade, but it's a scale that is not necessarily welcoming or even proportional to, I think, the length of the building, and again, the sort of overall height above it. So you might want to really think about that and lightening it up. Simply, opening that corner under the tower, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it looks like it's floating there. I know you're supporting it with columns in order to open it up, but again, we got to think about why the tower? I mean, I know it's marking the corner, but is it really, what is it? It doesn't have, I don't even know how to describe it. It just doesn't, it's not speaking to anything about its context. It's sort of making a really limp attempt at being sort of a focal point or iconic. I don't know, but it's just uninspired. Sorry, Ari. I hate to use those terms because I know this is your profession, and being an architect myself, it's this intersection that has the opportunity to either just go meh when you see it, or it's an opportunity to really do something unique and inspiring and designed, and it just speaks to, a craft and a quality that exemplifies Beacon, and it's not there. And again, I know there's a lot of work to do, but if this is the starting point, there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to be so blunt. So that's all I'll say at the moment, because again, I know that there's a lot of work to do. It's enormous. And it's going to completely change the character of this corner. So it's got to set an example. And an example that a lot of your buildings elsewhere in town have done. This is taking some design cues from that stuff. Is that really what we want to do? Yeah, it's such a prominent, such a visible, such a front door element it just, it's not doing it. It's just another freaking building, right? It's an opportunity. So where's the inspiration?
Yeah. We keep looking at it.
Sorry?
We're going to keep developing it.
Thank you.
Oh, I don't think I have anything to add.
Oh, okay.
But I would want to say this has, I have to agree, I'll go
I feel
in
like
a
my
different
fifth year
direction.
crit.
It's a, there's a great opportunity here,
Yeah.
right? And the city deserves it, and you've, through also multiple iterations, some of which of other projects, we've been doing this a long time together, you know, or as adversaries or partners or whatever, and, yeah, there were some weird things I could specifically, like, there's things, you're introducing new elements in this that I don't think you're probably comfortable with and don't seem to be adding to the design, but I'll leave it at that. But I'm looking forward to it being more developed.
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I'm just 50-year crit. Sorry. I feel just as tired, but anyway. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Philip Greeley from Colliers Engineering and Design. I'm going to focus on 3 or 4 items. I'll be pretty quick. At the last meeting, my colleague, Mr. D'Andrea, was here and presented the findings of our traffic impact study. There were some other items that were requested to be addressed by the board. To just recap what the improvements that were identified were at the intersection of Beekman Street and West Church Street and 9D North Avenue were traffic signal phasing to split the operation so that Beekman Street, which is the predominant traffic volume, would be split with the phasing for traffic exiting from West Church Street. That was found to allow adjusting timing and to improve the operation of the intersection with that modification. Part of that recommendation was also looking at shifting the pedestrian crosswalk from the north side of the intersection to the south leg of the intersection. And again, the big benefit in terms of capacity improvements would be the separating of the phasing so you don't have conflicting movements. I think there was some concern about that the overall intersection delays were reduced significantly, but delays on West Church Street were increasing under this scenario. I think the important part of that is that the bulk of the heavy traffic volumes are on the main line and coming off of Beekman Street and going to Beekman Street. West Church Street has somewhere between 20 to 30 vehicles maximum at the peak hours of the day. So when you look at delay increases, you look at the volumes also. So that's just one of the findings there. The second item we were asked to look at was providing a right turn lane on North Avenue 9D, heading southbound, turning on to Beekman Street. That plan is on the screen. It shows a separate right turn lane, which would require reconstruction of that lane, reconstruction of the sidewalk, and some other modifications there. The analysis shows that that would provide some benefit. It would be really to accommodate, you know, not the project traffic, but the heavy traffic movement to the train station. The important thing about that lane is the DOT right-of-way is very wide there. That is not the area that we're trying to purchase as surplus property. The surplus property is on Beekman Street. Even with that widening, there would still be another 35 to 40 feet of DOT right-of-way in that area, which could be, you know, used for landscaping, et cetera. The frontage along Beekman Street is the area that we have the application in for purchase of surplus property. That process is now moving forward with DOT. It is a lengthy process. Just to update you on our discussions with DOT, they had done some early reviews of the traffic information. We've provided them with the updates, the new information that was requested by your consultant, incorporating other development traffic, et cetera, et cetera. So we're waiting for an actual date to meet. I spoke with Jason Brenner in the regional office last Friday, and he's trying to arrange that meeting to review the technical aspects, but also to try to give us an update on where the process is on the purchase of the surplus property. When we are successful in getting the property along Beekman Street, it's important to note that there will still be an additional 15 feet plus DOT right-of-way along Beekman Street. So we're not taking the property right up to the street line. There's still some additional distance there, and that would not impact the right turn lane that you see on the plan that we've developed here. Again, we've identified, and based on our traffic volumes, we have identified fair share contribution towards these improvements, but that turn lane is feasible. There would still be plenty of additional setback distance in the DOT right-of-way, as I said, between 35 to 40 feet from where that lane and the sidewalk would be to where our property line would be. I think those are kind of the main highlights. We did receive Mr. Worsted's August 12th letter, and we also received a copy of John Russo's August 9th letter. So be happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure you want to hear from your consultant.
Yeah, I think we'll just, since we have him on your podium, we'll just go straight to our consultant for any his response. And if he can't hear me, maybe we can just let him know that we're looking for him to respond.
Okay, Ken, I'm going to put you next to my microphone here, and maybe you can summarize your review memo. Thanks.
Certainly. Thanks for having me over the phone. Again, Ken Worsted from Crane Mannion Engineering, the traffic consultant. We did review the latest submission provided by the applicant, pretty lengthy submission with a number of traffic exhibits included in it, including the right turn lane and an analysis of such. They had also provided a comparison table showing the results of the existing kind of geometry and the signal there, but with also the signal and phasing timing modifications proposed, and then also with the right turn lane added. And as Phil had kind of explained, the largest improvement is to the southbound Route 9D direction when those timings and phasing edits are made to the intersection. There are some side street movements, namely Church Street and Beekman, that will go up maybe by 10 to 20 seconds, while Route 9D will come down in delay the southbound direction as much as 240 seconds up to 230 seconds, somewhere in that range. Because of the volumes and the way traffic is kind of unbalanced at the intersection, even though we see some increases in delays on the side street, there is an overwhelming decrease in delay on the main line. And the result of that is when we look at the intersection as a whole, to take a high level view of it, we have a net improvement in the intersection. So the intersection as a whole may go from a level service F in the morning and the afternoon, but it improves to a level service C overall in those same peak hours. So those signal timing changes are pretty key to making that happen. when they took the right turn lane and added that in, it's not clear to me, but Phil might be able to answer this. There may have not been any additional signal timing adjustments or optimization when the right turn lane was put in. But just the straight up test of let's add a right turn lane, how does that improve things? Does have some, I'll say, marginal improvements. It's 5 to 6, 7, 8 seconds of improvement to a few of the movements. So not as much bang for your buck, if you will, in terms of putting an improvement in and getting results out of the intersection, but still an incremental increase or improvement, a decrease in delay and improvement in operations with that right turn lane. As Phil had mentioned, there's a heavy movement southbound, turning right in the morning to go towards the train station, eastbound on Beekman, turning left in the afternoon, leaving. Those volumes are maybe a third of the amount of traffic going southbound into the city. A third of it is turning right to go towards the train station. And in the afternoon, traffic leaving the city going northbound on 9D or coming off Beekman accounts to, maybe 40% of that volume heading out towards I-84. So although the right turn lane doesn't give you a lot of, improvement in terms of delay, I think it is still going to be an important part, kind of moving forward as this project and other projects kind of come up to just improve the flow of traffic coming to and from, the train station. So while it may not be necessary to mitigate the impacts of this project, it's still something that I think should be on everyone's radar. And it sounds like by the design of the site plan and where the building's located, that the right-of-way that they're purchasing off of Beekman, this won't have any effect on that. The building is plenty far away from Route 9D that if a right turn lane was added in now or later, it won't really have any effect on that part of the project. I think that pretty much summarizes our latest review for the board.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, just if there was any questions that you had.
Yeah, just curious, the southbound right turn lane, I'm sorry, I was looking at your plan. Is that just a striping?
No,
That's a reconfig.
reconstructing
Okay,
that
yep.
area to create a separate lane and reconstructing the sidewalk in that area.
Yeah. And then, again, just generally for the layperson, if I'm hearing all of the detail correctly, the addition of the southbound right turn lane is somewhat easing early morning commute traffic, right?
Correct.
And so any of the other improvements are all at any other time, especially peak evening, is going to take place through signaling changes, right?
Correct, that's what the proposal.
Yeah, and so what I want to know and understand is, what is the, and I think I know the answer, but I need to hear it confirmed, but what is the worst condition wait time level? Is it a C at this point, once you've got the signaling in place?
For the overall intersection, yes. The West Church Street approach would be a D level of service.
West Church, so, hang on.
And again,
Let's go there.
West Church Street would be the westbound approach. And the volumes on that approach are in the order of 30 vehicles. The volumes on the main line are approaching total both directions about 1,400 vehicles. And in the afternoon rush hour, traffic exiting from Beekman Street is over 300 vehicles coming out of there, and a lot of it making the left turn heading north.
Okay, so that's helpful. That answers my question. What is the wait time on the D level?
The wait time in this particular case, I think in the afternoon, is around 41 seconds.
Okay.
tell you exactly what.
And then what is,
So,
52
so
seconds?
in the afternoon.
Just under a minute.
PM peak hour, the eastbound approach would be 52 seconds.
and this is the Ralph Street.
This is on Beekman Street.
I'm sorry,
Street.
Beekman.
And on West Church Street would be 46
Hang on. Let's take it intersection by intersection. Eastbound off of Beekman onto North, turning north.
Yes.
What's the best wait time there? What's the level and what are the times associated with that level?
Okay, under current conditions, it's well over 300 seconds delay.
Yeah,
under current
that's a long time.
Under
So-
future, with the signal phasing modifications, that would be reduced to 52 seconds.
Okay, so, and I should have said worst case. That's the worst case with the signaling.
Yes.
So that's Beekman coming up east from the train station, waiting to turn left going north on
Correct.
North Avenue. So that's an improvement.
Correct.
So let's stick with that intersection in that direction. Turning right onto North into town, the wait times for that turn are quite constricted currently. Obviously, it's quite a long wait, but by what I would basically characterize as a striping problem. Basically, those are parking spots constricting for quite a bit of the distance. It obviously does at some point. Is there any consideration, and I'm not sure whether the city has purview over this, for lengthening that to help improve that right turn condition?
That could be done. You would lose parking spaces.
Yeah. My understanding is there's an agreement with the MTA, right?
Well,
For those parking spaces on Beekman?
that's fine.
I'm not sure.
It should be considered, because
Yeah.
that, again, I understand that we're looking at with signaling, and I'll just be me. I'll believe it when I see it and experience it, but that right turn is severely restricted by the volume of traffic coming in, especially the evening peak.
Be able to get into that lane.
To get into that lane and to
Correct.
just turn right.
Yes. Because of the queue of the left turn
Correct.
vehicles, which will be reduced significantly with these modifications.
Understood. So I would imagine that wait times has sort of a length of cars associated with it too, right? So whatever that equivalent length is, it should be considered to bring
For the right
that
turn.
right turn lane to whatever that length is. Anyway, so then I understand, and these are sort of secondary streets, the Church and Ralph. So Church is still at a D in new signaling
Yes.
situation?
And again, that's a low-volume approach to the intersection.
Right, so basically West Church is going up.
The
Or I
lanes
should
on-
say getting worse, and
Right, yeah.
because
yeah.
they're trying to provide the timing to the other approaches.
But it's a similar amount of weight across the split in both directions, like from
Yeah.
Church Street.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about the sort of knock-on effect. There are many times when I've been stuck coming south, and I've decided to just skirt the intersection and go up Ralph, or go up Church. Ralph is better, because it's closer on the southbound to get just out of the fray. There are others who may, going the other way, think that up cross down Church or Ralph is a good way to get, so it could ostensibly increase volume on those two streets, and then thereby have that knock-on effect of making those wait times even worse. So, there's always people looking for a workaround when there are really bad wait times. I don't know if that's been, a consideration. It's now, I understand the focus is on improvements to wait times right at that broader intersection, but I'm just curious what the other, potential knock-on effects are.
Yeah. Again, those are low-volume approaches, even with, people.
I understand. Yeah.
Phil, so when you're looking at adjustments to the timing, you're not only looking at the one intersection, you're looking at the
Correct.
other
It's the car.
intersections
Yes.
going
Correct.
up along the corridor, so.
Yeah, that's helpful to know.
And the big part of this improvement is, once you go to a split phase where there's no opposing traffic, the efficiency jumps up. So your added benefit of the additional time becomes even more important, because you don't have that people stopping to wait to see if somebody's opposing them, they have protection.
Describe that, layman, split phase opposing, what is that?
So, right now, Beekman Street and West Church Street operate together in the one phase. So if I'm making a left turn coming out of Beekman Street and someone's coming out of West Church Street, I will slow down because I don't know if they're gonna come across it, so I have a conflict.
I see, yep.
Split phase is Beekman Street runs independently, and then West Church Street would be given its own phase.
So you're saying by phase, different signaling?
Correct.
I got it, okay. So different lights and different timing?
Correct.
Yep. So, yeah, okay. Yep. That's somewhat helpful. So again, I think to summarize what I've heard from our consultant's review of your work, that there is, in the planned signaling upgrades, and again, I know those are the purview of the DOT now, right?
Correct.
The potential for a net improvement.
Correct.
Okay. Again, I'll believe it when I see it, but thank you.
And the turn lane, which we've brought to a fairly detailed concept level design, I think as we proceed, that would be something that we'd be willing to bring it to an advanced design, not necessarily for the construction of it, but as other projects come along. And that's important because if DOT is in agreement with our modifications, we would make sure that whatever we do could accommodate that without having to redo things.
Yep. You ever use computational analysis design in?
Yes.
Like, yeah, so running scenarios?
Yes. So when we're looking at this corridor, you know, as John pointed out, we're not just looking at this as an isolated intersection, we're looking at the whole corridor. And when we, for example, in this case, we were adding in all these other developments, and as things change, that turn lane, you know, becomes important, you know, to provide additional capacity to the intersection. And the volumes that you see there today are primarily train related. Even in the afternoon rush hour, there's a significant amount of traffic that turns right towards the train station, whether
Sure.
they're picking
Yeah.
up and.
There's no doubt, it's a busy intersection. Obviously, peak, morning, evening, you know, weekday are real challenges. There's also a new weekend dynamic as well. So, and the reason I asked about computational design is because I don't know if you ever run, you know, simulations
Yes.
on this sort of thing. To my point of believing it when I see it, we do this in my work all the time, and it's powerful, right?
So the computer software that we are required to use by DOT is called Synchro. Synchro has a simulation feature. So we actually look at the Synchro results, and then we look at the corridor to see how it accommodates. And for example, your comment about the queue coming up Beekman Street, if that right turn, you know, if people can't get into that turn lane, then it's not
They're
functioning.
stuck, yeah.
So by running the simulation, you will actually be able to see what the queue is, and then how many spaces, for example, if needed to be removed, you would be able to see that in the simulation.
So I guess the reason I ask is I'm glad to know that, you know, that's a part of your analysis and study. Is there a way for us to view those simulations?
Yeah, we can provide those to your consultant, or we can actually, you know, show the simulation run
Yeah,
for the
I
intersection.
would really love to see as close an approximation to a real-world situation through these types of simulations.
Okay.
Because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I know you and you're our consultant, and, you know, you're all professionals. It's a lot of numbers on a page.
Absolutely.
So I think the best, you know, the best
picture's worth 1,000
Yeah,
words.
yeah, I was going to say, an illustration is worth, is worth the value of the effort, so, yep,
So you want to see a pre and a post simulation.
love that.
Oh, John,
Could I ask a quick question? Did the signal changing include the intersection at 9D and 84, the bridge?
So our focus was on these immediate signals. That system, the the ramp intersections, is a separate system that the DOT has already installed their adaptive system there. So we haven't modeled that in this particular.
So are we just pushing a bottleneck a little bit up the
Well-
street a little bit?
It's adaptive.
What is that?
It should adapt, right? It's like AI. It knows what's coming before it's coming. Yeah, no, that's a very good question, because that's like anything, right? What's the knock-on effect? What are the unintended
So if that
consequences?
bottleneck doesn't work, then it affects.
Is Verplank included?
Yes.
I have a-
Are signal
How do we-
signal
how do
changes
we-
recommended at Verplank as well?
The coordination, from what I remember, was very minimal change there. That was pretty much set as is, so.
Okay.
We
I'll
still
I'll
have-
believe it when I see
Right, I
it.
mean, we still have issues between Verplank
Yeah,
and 84.
Absolutely. From there up to 84, I mean, the queues, we see the queues extend.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point, because you could do everything you can at this one intersection, and, everything's free and clear until you go, oop, oh, now Verplank.
84 is the
Is there a way
main
to
bottleneck.
Yeah.
widen the scope of this?
Well,
I mean, it's
I'll
like one more
tell you
set of
that,
lights, that's
that
really-
part of the DOT input here is, and again, our project is not adding a lot of trips to that interchange, but
At 84, you
your
mean?
point is that it's an existing condition. DOT is aware of it. They've run their models at that intersection. They will advise what effect, if any, that we have, which we don't believe is significant. But this improvement here, I think, in general, would help the flow towards the corridor, because, but it's not going to solve the issue at the interchange with 84.
It'll
we
just
have
help you get to
grades?
that bottleneck quicker.
Yeah. Do we have grades for the Verplank intersection?
Yes.
What's up? What's the
I
current?
don't have those.
Okay. It would be helpful to know what the grades are for that, and if we have it for at 84 too, that would be helpful.
Yes, I think we will ask DOT for their information, because they have studied the interchange to death.
Okay.
What are they running, NetSim to?
They're running an adaptive software system. I know they had, some issues with it early on, but that's, so. And they run the same Synchro model when they evaluate it, so.
John, can I?
Yeah, please.
I had one question. Who'd be responsible for any lane changes or any roadway modifications there? Is it the state, the county?
So the state would have to approve any modifications anywhere along that corridor, including what we've identified at this intersection. That's where we're waiting for their feedback on that, and we're trying to get that meeting set up. In terms of who would implement it, there's some signal hardware that has to be, it's not just the timing, it's phasing and it's hardware. So usually they'll look for applicants to assist in that process.
And is there a way to determine whether or not the added lane, besides having the speed difference, the level, whether the cars that are backed up in that lane interfere with Tompkins, right? At what point? Like, that would be a tipping point that might be important to people.
Yes.
Good
And-
point. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm sure more to come, right?
Yes.
Crisp, concise.
I don't know, maybe your consultants might have comments.
Yeah.
that they
Did you have anything else?
Mostly just kind of echoing what Mr. Greeley had mentioned, that, of course, there are other projects being developed throughout the corridor, and DOT is looking at expanding their right-of-way, widening the road. There's a number of contemplated efforts, but similar to the Edgewater project or the others that have come through, I think the key point here is we're a proverbial drop in the bucket, but we are looking at major changes to hopefully improve the conditions here, not make it worse.
Yeah. And again, just for the record and as a reminder, your analyses are taking into account just the traffic currently known and coming off of your proposed,
And the other projects coming
and the
online.
other projects, thank you. Okay. That's good to know. Okay. We don't have to spend a ton of time, but anything you want to highlight for the applicant?
Yes, so I think just the one piece that I wanted to talk about, that I think my comments changed, were in response to the sections that were shown. So just as a reminder, right, this district requires, it's unique from all other districts in the city in that there is a requirement for kind of a pedestrian clearway. There's discussion of like the street transition zone between that clearway and the roadbed, and then also a building transition zone. So I think the applicant had asked for some guidance from the board. What they're showing right now, the pedestrian clearway varies, it looks like, but it's around 5 feet. So my main recommendation was that is the one out of those three pieces, that is the one piece that has required width, right? That be 8 feet. So I had asked the question, it looked like there was a pretty significant building transition zone plus the arcade, which also functions as a building transition zone. So my request or my comment was, based on the code, I think it would be recommended that that building transition zone be shortened so that the pedestrian clearway could meet that 8-foot width consistently. And I wasn't quite clear. Right now, the sections don't quite match up with the landscaping plan and the site plan, so I think those just need to be rectified, and then we might be able to see the full length a little bit more. But, you know, in terms of guidance, my recommendation would be that we try to prioritize that pedestrian clearway so that there is a clear public right-of-way, not on the site, not underneath the arcade, not within the building, that is 8 feet wide where we can.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's super smart. And also with a clear understanding of how street trees are being integrated.
Yes, yeah, so the street transition zone is where the street tree should be, and that's where a little bit of the discrepancy, I think, happens between the landscaping plan and the sections that were shown. We did see the street trees kind of in that transition zone, which is where they should be, so just kind of lining those up.
Understood.
And our goal is to align, just to respond to that just briefly, our goal is to incorporate the landscaping plan into the photorealistic rendering so that that does come together for your September meeting.
That would be helpful.
To remember which month it was. Yeah.
Yep.
And then besides that, most of my comments were just kind of held on there from last month, continuing as the application continues to evolve. Some were removed because you guys addressed them, but nothing new that really needs to be discussed.
Thank you. Mr. Russo.
I have nothing else to add at this point. Basically, the submission didn't have a lot of engineering aspects to it.
Okay. We'll just go around the board just real quick. Any other questions or comments to the applicant?
One of the things that, now that we have an understanding of it's the building's relationship to 9D and how what the potential turning lane might be there if it ends up being something that happens. That should be explored because there's a large distance there. It's like, you know, there's a large area. Right now, there's also a topographic change. There's a significant topographic change. So that's going to have to be addressed at some point. I mean, it's part of what the development of the design. So part of how this building is going to look and feel as a part of the urban fabric is going to be how close it is or how far away it is from the street, and how that semi-public space is developed, right? Yep. And I think there's an opportunity there for a number of things that could happen. And I think they'd be welcome if they were positive public benefits, you know.
Anything else we can do for you?
That's it for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will go to the next item on the agenda, 19 Henry Street Townhomes, submitted by Laurie Joseph Builders, in exactly 1 minute. Take a quick break. Need blankets. And go.
Taylor Palmer, Cuddy and Fader, joined by Dan Kohler this time with Hudson Land Design. We're before you in connection with continued review for site plan approval for 2-story attached townhouses located at 19 Henry Street. Since our last appearance before your board, we did put a supplemental submission together, which included additional renderings from Day and Stokoza showing all sides of our structure with dimensions and other callouts. Day Stokoza also provided some floor plans of the first and second floor that demonstrated light and access in conformance with the city code, highlighted in some of the planner's comments. And of course, just dealing with the residential code in general. Dan will touch on this just quickly, but for some site plan highlights, we did show details for 2 refuse containers and the proposed garbages. I think there was a question regarding garages. Replacing the existing sidewalk to its full 8.5-foot length, adding a detail for a monolithic curb and sidewalk detail on the plans, and then updating the driveway apron to reflect the portion of the sidewalk that's intended for the pedestrian travel, and the level grade across the driveways that will reduce tripping hazards and maintain ADA compliance. And then we showed the potential impacts associated with constructing that parking lot if we were to do it in the rear, as distinct as proposed in the front. So our recent submission included that rear parking exhibit, which Dan is switching to now. And it does demonstrate, importantly, that with the addition of the one-way in, one-way out driveway for the new parking area, the total coverage would be increased pretty significantly. We'd be at about 85% total coverage for the site, so it's about an increase of about 30%. There's some delta there. I'm not, the exact number between the 2 plans is aligned, but it's approximately 30%. The parking area would encompass almost the entire rear. I kind of laughed in the rendering, the folks sitting around the tree in the back corner of the property with the dog. Thanks, Gianna. Yeah, I guess Dan's going to zoom in on that one. That got me laughed. But that would eliminate the possibility of decks or green space behind.
I don't think you could have made it look more bleak.
It actually doesn't need to be paved.
That's right. So with that, I'll say that, as we're proposing, we do have some other visuals too that we can certainly show the board. But tonight, really, all we're asking the board to consider doing is setting the hearing. But I can have Dan walk you through the changes, because I think they're important to show what we're proposing here. We have moved the building up. We do see more comments from the planner about additional moving up ability, but we wanted just to kind of get back before you and sort of get your feedback. Because again, our proposal here is to try and maintain that green space in the rear with the organization of the site. Sort of in the context, we did put in a bunch of drone photos as well, sort of give you the whole context of Henry Street. We've talked about this before, the office building down the street. We have all the different setbacks, which is up on the screen now, to the various buildings along the street today. So if you sort of grow in distance, we're still, at 18 feet or 15 feet, whatever number it is, we are still closer than the majority of Henry Street, no matter how you skin it. So we wanted to make sure we had that for you, because I know that's been an important piece of a lot of the projects, trying to align the buildings to keep them consistent along the streets.
Yep.
So,
I think you just hit the word of the day, moving up ability.
yes.
I don't know what that is. But
You always have to
okay.
catch me on the one word. That's then the rule. So
I
there's one
just-
word made up.
It just goes to show I'm listening to every
Appreciate that.
word, no matter how fast you deliver it. So just a quick note. One, I truly appreciate your listening and taking the steps to study the rear yard parking. And so we can talk about that. I'd like to talk about it, as well as the other context, because I realize last meeting, I had the placement of this kind of wrong. It's actually more right across from
Yep.
the parking lot, the weekend junk fair.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry, other people's treasure fair.
One man's treasure.
That's right.
Yeah, the drone doesn't show up, but if you look at the Google aerial, it does have all of the stands out
Yeah.
there in the parking lot.
And, again, the context is a difficult one, because I look at this mostly as a precedent-setting application and potential build relative to what then could in future occur, right? And not necessarily to say that the current context is one that we should sort of use as our kind of benchmark, because it's less than ideal, right? And so therefore, the argument of, well, there's curb cuts, because there's curb cuts all over
Yeah,
the
it's about
place
50 feet,
along
and we're
Henry
about
Street.
55 when you look at it all together. So
Right.
there's not a big delta between what's there today and what we're proposing, even though it sounds strange.
I understand that part of the argument, right? However, again, when I look at this as, again, precedent setting, right? For what could, in the future, be, you know, other development along that frontage. And so it then saves us the pain of that next development saying, well, look what they did, we should be able to do it too, right?
And as long as they have the same size lot and the same access, the same stormwater and other controls, it would be precedential. But if it's different in any of those, then certainly wouldn't be bound by that precedent. But we hear you, and that's why we've been moving this building, shifting things around to try and make it
Yeah, and again.
a good
I
example of what you're.
Fully appreciate the effort and the listening, and so thank you for that. We can talk about then what a altered parking and rear application could look like. I understand, obviously, it means that you've got to shave off the bay windows, right?
It's one of them, yes.
I'm curious what it means for the garages in the front facing the street, which again are, depending on, you know, your aesthetic, less than ideal from my viewpoint, but, and also an opportunity for more of kind of an engaged street frontage just in terms of the human experience, right? Rather than a garage door sitting there, it's an opportunity for a porch along the street. So I'm curious if there was thinking about what the offset of parking in the rear to the garage scenario is. Because I don't know if it's necessarily illustrated here.
So,
Aren't there perhaps other parking configurations now?
Well, then, yeah, we can get to that too.
Rear?
Well,
I mean, you could have 3 units and park along the side of one of the end units.
yep, there's
I
a
mean,
possibility too.
It's not,
right, another alternative is an apartment building, right? So that would be another change. So it wouldn't be townhouses, it wouldn't be this construct that's also permissive in the zone. So that would be the sort of that would be an alternative, right, to the proposal. So the applicant is proposing townhouses, but multifamily is permitted, and that would be the probably likely result of that. You can't go down to 3 units, so as a consequence, it would probably shift to a multifamily building rather than a townhouse design. Just letting it, from an economic standpoint, it just wouldn't work. That's been the driver. So that's, I think, part of it is and there were mentions, I think, in the comments from the city's planner with respect to reducing the potential for reducing the size of the building, but that, I don't know if that takes into account the second floor and the bedrooms upstairs, so when you do that, you'd reduce and you wouldn't be able to orchestrate the 3 bedrooms. So there's each shift changes some component of it, maybe not on the first floor, but second floor and tying that into the garages. So that's how this has all sort of come together, is trying to maintain a permitted use. Again, it's a zoning compliant use, it's consistent, there's no regulation, limitation on parking in the front yard in this district. It's proposing to try and meet those standards, and of course, this is another made-up word, but hodgepodgery of what is Henry Street today, and it is an extension, really, of that. It's up to the frontage, it's been reduced significantly, and we're trying to modify all of those features, but there are drawbacks, and I don't know, Mr. Gunn, I know you're in that area. Generally, I think the public hearing will be hopefully helpful in seeing whether those neighbors want a parking lot abutting them for the residential district. Mr. Byrne mentioned earlier the transition, right, from single family in this transitional district. So all of those things together would probably highlight the importance of having that green space behind, not just that in the front. So I think there's a lot of relationships that they're trying to account for. Of course, we're also across from that fair. And what is the future of 5 Henry, and a lot of that sort of street activation there at the corner. So I think there's a lot of things going on, and we did try and incorporate that into the new design for the driveways, the sidewalk widths. Into this design.
It's fair to say that for both scenarios, there are pros and cons, right?
Yes.
And there are elements to explore that are valid for each, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so again, we thank you for taking the steps to help us explore in this scenario as townhouses a potential rear yard parking to offset the clutter of front yard parking and garages. So it's part of the consideration and analysis and study.
Right, and across
Right.
the street, as you know, from the downtown parking, the parking committee has looked at that parking lot across the street from the site for being a potential parking garage. So, I know that I would want to sit on my porch looking at a parking garage, but I live in the country. So for me, I think generally speaking, there are considerations too of what is the CMS that's directly across the street. So there's there's on-street parking, it's a very wide street, there's a lot going on there. Doesn't mean things don't change, maybe 5 Henry really helps too, to kind of activate that area again, but, it is a pretty big.
Yep. So, part of this exercise is weighing those pros and cons for
Right.
each, right? So.
But we're by no means done with this, we just want to make sure
Yeah.
we submitted that, so you have the benefit of it, and hopefully, we might be able to be in position to set for hearing for further comment, feedback from the neighbors as we put this out.
Yeah, I mean, so again, I go back to this question of, in the rear yard parking scenario that you've graciously shared with us, right? It introduces a different aesthetic on the side elevations that, still could be okay. It introduces the sort of long driveway along the side of the building, on both sides. It, eliminates, the ability to recreate in a backyard scenario for the owners of those units. I think we still should discuss and explore what a more optimal rear yard parking scenario might look like. If that's the direction we as a board would like to sort of see you take this. So, again, I'm just curious if there is an offset for it and a plan for the garage floor area in a rear parking scenario.
I'll have to speak to the applicant specifically about that change.
And, to some degree, is it a benefit to, basically more livable floor area? I don't know.
I know there was
Curious.
some feedback, at least initially, in responsive to the city planner's comments with respect to how sort of the travel way for the vehicles, they couldn't be right up against the building, so there's also a lot of, I guess, generally speaking, trying to make reductions and make it all work in the rear of the building. Even if you had the angled parking, you still couldn't have it right up against the building, so that the functionality may not ultimately work, period.
Yeah.
But again, it's sort of it was an exercise to show more of the visual, right, the community character aspect of it, and it is. The 2 pictures on the top right are the images we're talking about.
Yes, pictures speak 1,000 words.
You could do rear parking and not have it look like that.
Yeah.
It is possible.
We could do 1 unit and then, right.
No, you could have 4 units and you could have a much more amenable parking situation. It does not need to be all asphalt. That's clearly an effort to make it look as ugly as possible. Thank you. Thank you for that option.
It's set, the whole thing is set in, on top of a marsh, basically.
Yes, that's right.
And
The Beacon Pond.
at least they didn't show chain link fence around it.
It's coming.
Thank you. I'll write that down.
That's the next rendition. I think that is chain link fence.
No, can't be. Anyway. Yeah, I think, again, so I'm curious to hear from my fellow board members about that particular component. But let's just really quickly, I probably touched on one of your larger
letter.
comments. I stole your letter.
No, I think it's exactly that. I think it is, if the bay windows could not be retained because of the, one way in and one way out, I think that would be a loss to the design of the building. I
Yeah.
think that's a nice architectural feature that's in the existing plans. And then I think to the point, the other big con that was kind of showed to us about this option of the rear parking was the amount of impervious surface. So what I stated in my letter is the board, I think right now you're showing the 24-foot, and so the board does have the ability to reduce that. So there could be kind of reductions of impervious surfaces that way. And then I think my other comment, you know, if it is one way, that there could hopefully be some kind of angling, which would be necessary, I think, to reduce that lane as much as possible, to have some kind of angle so it's easier to pull in and out. And then I think too, this wasn't in my letter, but I agree with the chair's comment that it is, I think, a loss to lose the patio space in the rear yards of each of the townhouses, because I do think the townhouse, style is a really nice addition, and it really speaks to the intent of the transition zone. So I would hate to lose that, but I think to the point, because we're losing that patio space in the back, what that could mean for the front yard space in terms of the addition of porches, which are a very common theme throughout the city that we could kind of bring to this corridor. So I think, you know, to the fair point, I think the board has, I appreciate that the effort was put in to show this, this option. I think there's tweaks that could be made to this, and I think it's a fairly supportable option, is I think maybe not what the intent was in showing it to us, but I think it has sparked some ideas about that could be a solution. And then my only comment about it was, you know, you're losing 240 square feet, and I get that would change the whole floor plans within it, but you are losing 240 square feet that was dedicated to garage space. So could there be savings somewhere to potentially, again, reduce that impervious surface, or reduce the building coverage, or potentially be able to gain back the bay windows or in some way? So that was just a comment in terms of, you know, we didn't see floor plans for this option, so I think that was the comment of where those were going. So those were the main comments, I think, pertaining to that. If the rear yard parking is not the option that moves forward, I do appreciate that we have continued to kind of shrink the front yard setback as much as possible to bring the building closer to the street than maybe some other buildings are on this block. I just think, you know, what's shown to us in the renderings, that looks like less than the 21 feet that is proposed on the site plan. So this is a nice image, right? When you see these, when you see the townhomes close to the sidewalk, but I wonder if that's actually, you know, when you look at the site plan, that setback looks a little bit more distinct. So I just kind of, the vision that's being shown is what I'm trying to achieve when I'm talking about, can the front yards, driveways be reduced even further if we do go with the garage front yard parking. And then there was a comment about turf grass, and maybe this is a silly.
There's no turf grass, yeah.
Okay, there was a comment about
I don't know where
turf
that
grass.
came
I'm like,
from.
we're not talking about artificial turf.
Nope.
It was a way.
Nope.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that was just, I saw that and that jumped
Nope.
out to me, and it sounded not
Nah,
your
no,
style.
not
So
proposed.
I just
Yeah, nope.
apologies for the weird comment, but I
We
just
use
had
pesticides.
To I just had to make sure. Yeah.
I just noticed, and I have to say, this is just pure art.
Yeah, that's
But
what you were
these
talking about
poor-
earlier.
That's what I was talking
The
about
kid
earlier.
just needs
That's
to
what I
pop
said.
the balloon or
Poor
something.
children
They're hanging-
relegated
I know,
to
those poor
sitting under
kids.
the bare
They just
tree.
wish they had their patios. They just need their patios.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, that's what you get.
In a puddle.
Puddle in the parking, somebody went to the length to put puddles in the parking lot.
And everywhere else.
Art.
It's been a rainy,
did that?
couple months.
The trees are a bit sad looking. too,
That's
Of course,
it for
it's
my
a
comment.
van.
That's it for my comment.
Trees are frowning.
Thank you.
right? Yes.
But you know, I just hit on the one point, like, I really do appreciate where the architecture style is going on this, in terms of, I think this was one of the initial big talking points, and I'm glad that it's still being retained. The style of adding a little bit of variation, but not making it look mismatched. I still just want to highlight that. I think that's gone in a nice direction.
And there are a number of other townhouse projects we looked at. I mean, we'll submit in our supplemental submission sort of an outline of those, but all the setbacks are more than what we're contemplating, but that's just the style with the townhouses that typically translates to the garage in front. So for purposes of that, we'll illustrate it. We know it's not beacons. That's why we're trying to be balanced with that approach, bringing it close to the frontage and align it, but there is a lot of this style of townhome
Yep.
to boot.
Yeah, and again, like I said, there's pros, cons, and advantages to both. I'm not, necessarily totally out of favor of the original scenario. I just really wanted to kind of understand what the alternatives might be. So like I said, it's helpful that you shared with us what the beginnings of an alternative might look like. We want to make those poor kids happy. So, anyway, with that, Mr. Russo.
I only had a few minor comments with regards to the original layout plans that were developed. I think you kind of covered everything else on this alternative and advancing it forwards.
Great. Okay, so board members.
I want to talk about briefly, because we're going to come up, we're going to be looking at some other transition zone projects, proposals. And just in way of background, the transition zone was originally a parking district, and what the effect and the intent of that was to limit new development there so that eventually it could be developed into like even more extensive parking than the large parking lots that we ended up with, which was part of it, like a 1970s era plan where Main Street was all going to be one-story strip mall buildings or whatever, and there'd be like extensive parking in order to, that was going to be the way that we rejuvenated, which thankfully that didn't work. So the result of that is that a lot of those parking district lots, a lot of the parcels are in poor repair, right? They weren't either, they didn't have new construction during the last few decades, and also existing buildings were falling apart. So one of the intents of doing the transition district was to allow that development to occur, to promote development in that sort of scale change between the central business district and the residential districts surrounding it, which makes sense. There was also a decision, which I wasn't sure of at the time, but it makes sense if you, at the time I requested that multiple lots be, like a test fits be developed with the proposed zoning, so we could see how, what potential alternatives for like the lot location, a number of other things which weren't specifically itemized in the way that the central business district, the CMS districts had design guidelines, right? And the linkage district had design guidelines, right? The transition zone doesn't have a lot of design guidelines. The intent was to have flexibility to allow a lot of freedom and whatever, be independent as hogs on ice. Anyway, so one of the issues, one of the struggles that we've had with these transition zone proposals is that they don't necessarily need to be contextual. They can be built to a larger scale, right? And and so far, what we've seen is that we don't have a lot of, there's not a lot of predetermination about how things are going to sit, buildings are going to sit on the site, things like the parking locations, right? It's up for grabs. It's contextual. We have to sort of make determinations about that, both between the applicants and the board. And one of the other complexities is that the contexts of these T-zone buildings varies throughout the city, right? They're in different neighborhoods. Some of them are in purely residential areas. Some of them are next to commercial and are surrounded by commercial. So it would be difficult to make a one-size-fits-all set of, that's what I think where it ended up, why there weren't more detailed design guidelines, right? Because of the diversity of contexts that the T-zones were in, right? Also, there was sort of, like I said, a general idea that, like, let's see what the market magic comes up with or whatever, you know, allow more flexibility for developers. I'm wondering whether we need to revisit that. We probably can't do that within the scope of these projects, but I think we need to keep it in mind as each one of these comes up that we need to be, do what we're doing here, which is being a little bit particular about it. This is a different situation than some of the other ones. This obviously is a high-value project. It's going to be townhomes. They are going to spend money on design and other things, right? It's going to be a high-quality, expensive project. There are other projects which are not going to have the same financial benefit. So I guess that's just me adding a little context and saying that it's more work for us and a little bit more riskier for the developers in that it may not be 100%. We may want to be make particular choices or encourage certain things to happen depending on the context of each site. I guess that's it.
Yeah, agreed. And in the T district, you're absolutely right. Depending on what you've seen so far, the 152, 158 Fishkill Avenue project, that was in the T district, immediately budding CMS, what then has commercial and residential and gas stations around it. You have the 460 Main Street project, which is nearly complete. That was also CMS and T, and the building in the back had parking along the side. You know, as it transitioned into the single-family residential that's proximate or skank, and the townhomes, detached townhomes that are in that area. So this is a sort of its own abutting some commercial uses, significant commercial, you know, on the front, more residential to the rear. So I think the design kind of is emblematic of that transition to the single family to the rear.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Got anything? No? You said your piece? Okay. So my sense is that we perhaps shouldn't leave you hanging on which of these two directions.
You want me to choose?
Hold up now. And that's I guess the next sort of question I think the board, we should start to discuss here, right? So with further prompting, your thoughts?
I have to tell you, although I'm concerned about how that whole streetscape on Henry is going to get developed, if it's a cookie cutter of this, if this ends up being like wildly financially successful and all those buildings get demolished and this gets extended, I still think that having the driveways in the front for this particular lot is preferable because of the whole development. You know, it's neither of them's perfect. We shouldn't. You know, cars are terrible. They're just.
Hey, wait! I love my car.
We have to accommodate them.
Love my car. Best car I've ever had. What do you think?
I don't really like having the parking in the rear.
You don't like having parking in the rear?
Yeah.
Clear. Not in favor of parking in the rear.
Well, I'm not in favor of that parking in the rear, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you
We
for
can
that.
invite you to the opening around that tree.
Yeah. It might be a little better if there were some leaves on the tree. It might be really more
Those
enticing.
poor children. That is probably one of the best. I'm going to do a screenshot of that and frame it. It's
I did,
beautiful.
and I sent it.
It's like, there's an artist. Who is the artist? So many. Anyway.
It's like those. I think it was one of it was 460 Main Street where we talked about preserving there was a tree protector, or it was something that was designed to prevent people from sitting on it, right? To prevent. Right. So it was those old curb. I don't know what you describe those. They protect the tree.
Planters.
The plant. Thanks, the word.
Planters.
Thank you. That's the word. The easy word I couldn't come up with. Planter, but it was designed, and I believe John Clark had said, well, we have to figure out if they're historic before we could get rid of the planter. But you know, they were eyesores, and they were served to quite literally not allow you to, or not encourage you to.
Yeah.
Lawyer.
I think I remember the ones you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough one. Like I said, there's so many pros and cons to each of them. And you may be surprised to hear this, but I'm more inclined to more inclined toward the parking in the front. I hate that I just said that. So, is that helpful?
Party in the front. It's usually in the back. A little mullet.
You
cannot
want to
see
you want to
that.
test that material out before you get here.
My son's only 4, you know.
Yeah, I just
Easy
think
critic.
that the context, this wouldn't work in other contexts, but this particular context, it is, right on the edge of appropriate. So you're hearing from the board that, again, we appreciate your studying the rear parking scenario. But I honestly think that the front parking scenario allows for in total better overall development, and therefore ultimately experience not only of the users, but it's not necessarily as detrimental to the streetscape as it could be in other contexts. Hopefully I don't regret this. Yeah, and again, I'll go back to the illustrations that you're sharing with us. Damn well better be representative of what actually gets built, because I'm absolutely sick and tired of the switcheroos that are happening
And I can
all
say for
over
the
the
applicant's
place.
purpose, Mr. Chairman, that I know that, I forget what word I used earlier, but the movability of the building towards, I think they're already exploring that concept for additional bringing the building up as far as it can. So I think they're looking at Natalie had some additional comments on that front, so.
Yeah,
it's
it's the
something that's still-
architectural details.
Yeah, I'm
that
talking about,
is
the
referring to.
aesthetic.
Yep.
Because quite honestly, I love all styles. I wouldn't say I'm a sucker for this particular style, but the way that it's been represented is proportionally balanced. It's, I'm not a huge fan of the large expanse and the depth and the fact that you've got that entire pediment happening, because it's just not how it would happen historically. So again, I would, offer that I'd love to see some other treatment of that side elevation, especially at the roof line, because that whole pediment is just not natural for that depth. But the front elevations that you're sharing with us and the aesthetic there, again, as much as I'm not all for Disneyfying anything, for what it is, it's well represented, right? So,
Is there some way to ensure that what gets stamped for, or the building permit drawings actually represent what we've approved?
well, doesn't
In
this
terms of
need
details?
ARB?
Yeah, it's got,
This will go to ARB,
yeah, it
right?
has all of our,
And this stuff.
yeah, it's all the
Yeah.
site plan. That's what's approved.
So,
But still,
Any deviation would require either
we
an
don't
amendment
see
from you or.
construction documents.
no, I know. Yeah, and again, we've been burned enough by the switcheroos. I'm not saying you're going to do it. I'm saying just don't be one of those applicants. So, hopefully that's helpful direction.
It is.
I'm sure because you opened with this, you're looking to us to help you with scheduling a public hearing.
That'd be excellent.
What say you, board?
Seems like a logical next step.
Okay, so I'll accept a motion to schedule public hearing for next month's meeting.
Motion.
Motion by Karen,
Second.
second by Kevin, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll work on my material for next month.
You gotta rehearse it.
It's
Test it out. There's a new bar opening up down the street, so test it with a different no, it's all good. All right, so next item on the agenda, actually, our number 3 has been moved to the September 10th agenda at the request of the applicant, and that was 14 North Cedar Street. And so therefore, that brings us to our item number 4, review of application for site plan approval, accessory dwelling unit, 16 Rock Hill Road, submitted by Donna Scheisel. I hope I said that right. Scheisel, thank you. Hi.
So I have a detached garage, so there's no changes to anything outside, it's just the inside changes I need to make. So that's what I'm requesting, a change to do that.
Okay.
Other than there's 2 rotted windows that have to be replaced. So that's the exterior change, but it's not physically changing the building.
Aren't you changing the garage doors to
They
swing
were
doors?
changed 2.5 years ago. Yeah, I'm 61 years old, I couldn't lift those anymore, so I bought doors that I could open this way.
Okay.
I'm sorry, again, how does this fall under the purview of the planning board?
It's an accessory apartment.
Accessory apartment,
In a detached accessory building. So it comes to you for site plan review. All accessory apartments used to come to you for site plan review.
But there's
Now,
no,
if
there's no
it's-
site plan.
It's a site plan approval is what the category is.
There was a
Wait, there
survey
was some-
submitted. They
there's a
asked me to do a
survey.
survey, so I submitted I got a new survey done.
Yeah, I see that here.
Okay.
Okay. Thoughts?
I can start. I didn't have any major comments. I think it was mostly points of clarification. I think one of the sheets had indicated that it was, 755 feet and 900.
It's about 900,
Okay.
I think, closer to, yeah.
So it was just clarifying the size of the existing garage and the size of the primary house, just because there's calculations we have to do about total coverage. So I just needed those 2 numbers so I could calculate that.
Okay, so you need an exact number. So my house was built in 1860, and every single time I look at it, somebody changes. I have anywhere from a 1,300 square feet to an 1,800 square foot house. So
Yeah.
depending on who's written it, so I have to.
To figure that out.
But I can get it off the survey, obviously, that's the most accurate thing.
Yeah, so I think, because what the code has requirements is, that the size of the unit can't be more, of the accessory unit can't be more than 50% of the total square footage of principal building. It looks like it's not, but I think we just need those numbers to clarify, right? And then the maximum total coverage on the lot permitted is 30%. So that's why we needed kind of both.
Yeah, I have a
units.
third of an acre.
Okay.
So it's a pretty decent
So I
sized
think,
lot.
yeah, like I said, clarification points,
So
I
you want
think.
the exact numbers of the square footage. Isn't that on the survey?
No,
No.
it's not.
Yeah, and it'd be, I think for clarity, it would be useful if you could just illustrate on your next submission, just exactly those calcs that,
The exact
Our
number of
planner
my
is-
current
yeah.
house and then the garage?
Yep.
Okay.
for the record.
And then, so my comment number 2 was just about notes on there, about occupancy, just so that you're aware, and then they have to be noted on the plans for kind of the approval, right? And that one of the units will be the primary, your primary.
house.
Yep, so whether you're keeping the main house or the accessory unit, just
No,
kind
I'm
of.
still living in my house.
So noting that on I think G01 or A01, either one of those sheets, you can add that to there, as well as that it's not permitted to be used for a short-term rental.
No.
Right, so that just has to be noted on there.
I'm sorry, so where am I putting this, on the architectural drawing? Is that what you're looking for, or on the
Do you happen to have copies of these comment
I brought the
letters?
wrong side, I brought the wrong one for
Oh,
myself.
but you do have them, so this way you
Yes, I
can.
do,
okay.
but I'm asking which, is it coming on the form, or is it coming on the architect?
drawing.
The drawing.
On the drawings.
You want the architect to
Yep.
update that?
Yep.
Okay.
My third comment was just about off-street parking, so a minimum of 1 space is provided for each accessory apartment, and that's in addition to the 2 spaces that are required for the single-family residence.
I can fit 5. Not that we've done that, sadly, but we've done 5, so yeah, 3 would be no problem.
Right, they just need to demonstrate it on the
Okay.
plans.
Yep.
It should, okay.
And then it sounds like you're not doing any new lighting outside, you already have existing, yeah.
Everything's-
So that was my other one of just kind of, sometimes there's a new light being proposed for entry or way or not, so that was my 4th. So again, points of clarification, I think.
So to that point, would you would you recommend the applicant just simply list as a part of this application, no new lighting is proposed?
There is,
Yeah, if
there is an outside light.
No new lighting is
Oh, no
proposed.
new
above what you,
So
what
So
is
maybe
present.
when you're having them put that on the plans, the other notes, just have them add that note as well. No new lighting is proposed.
Okay.
Or no exterior changes, I think is
Well,
what
there
you
is no,
said, right? So,
yeah. Well, the windows, does that count?
Are you replacing like for like? I don't think that would count. if
No,
you're
they're
doing-
actually going to be slightly bigger, because the windows, you couldn't, I know that the architect told me I had to have them legal access. They're both upstairs, so they had to be legally accessed, so somebody could get out in the fire. The ones right now are little tiny things, so.
I don't think that impacts anything for the zoning code. I would leave that up to, I think,
Yeah, I think
Building
Bruce would
inspector.
want that indicated on the architectural drawing to represent egress, right?
Yeah, so they were made big enough to, so somebody could get out.
Yeah.
If they, yes,
That's
that's what,
good.
that was the change. So that's already in the architect, so,
in the architectural.
yeah, that's
plan.
in the architectural drawings.
Yep.
So just, like I said, I think they're mostly clarifying notes and kind of giving us the dimensions of things so we can.
So this is all going on to the survey, I mean, onto the architectural drawings.
And I would just recommend that you have the architect generate elevations, even if they're not submitted, so that you can make sure that they're coordinated. And,
Elevation-
which
there's
I've seen, sometimes
elevations.
people put windows in places that they actually don't work if they're not really.
That's, it's
yeah.
on the drawings.
I'm just
already.
saying,
Yeah.
I've seen it happen before with other
Okay, no,
applications
that's
where
actually- they're in
the
the-
people were doing things on plans that didn't work
Yeah, no,
because
no,
of
they're
the.
just, I mean, they're regular windows, it's nothing extreme, it's just a regular
Just
window.
making
But
it- yeah.
the windows that are there now are rotted and horrible. Any other questions?
That was it for my comments.
Yeah, just, John, your comments?
So Natalie had most of the comments that I had. Also, the only other thing I would ask is, how is this accessory dwelling unit going to be serviced by water and sewer?
That's, okay, so there's already, 2 years ago, there's already a full bathroom in there. So that's been in there for 2 years, 2.5 years.
Okay, so the plan needs to show where these utilities are coming from. Are they coming?
Oh, they're tied into my house.
Okay, so that still needs to be shown as to how it's being provided over to that building.
Okay. All right.
Just on the plan, it needs to be noted.
Yep.
So it just needs to note that they're tied into my house, because everything's all.
Well, it would be nice also to
show.
know where they actually
Where the
run.
lines run? Yep.
Yeah, not just a note, but actually where they're running.
Okay.
And basically the size of those lines also.
I'm sorry, size?
The size of the lines, the size
Okay.
of the pipes that are.
Yeah, so your other comments touched on the same, that, next time we'll go to you first,
Yes, sir.
because it's the same comments, right? Parking,
Sorry.
and then now.
No, that's okay.
I mean, you were talking
You made it
about
sound better
zoning
than I did, so.
Okay, any other questions for the planner and engineer?
No, I think.
Any other comments, notes, questions around the board for the applicant?
This is an aside, and it's really more of a Bruce issue, but it looks like the insulation requirements might not be up to the stretch code that are listed, like it might be old.
Yeah, we'll have to address that with the, when they come in for the building permit.
Okay.
Just, if you can, I can address it now since I'm dealing with the architect. It needs to
Well,
be
it's the city adopted the New York State Stretch Code, which is a little more stringent than the New York State Energy Code. So there's just higher R values that have to be met
Okay.
for the wall,
Yeah.
walls and ceilings.
Okay.
Yeah, the architect can reach out to me, and I can discuss it with him. Probably easier, that way you can reflect it on the plans when he comes in, when you come in for the building permit, it'll all be
Okay.
pretty well set.
All right, and so I submit all this back to you guys and then come back, I guess, next month? Is that
Yeah,
what works?
because next month we will currently here entertain a motion to hold public, well, actually, yeah, public hearing for next month. And we can also, so we'll do one at a time, but we can also authorize our planner, our attorney to draft resolution for our action next month as well.
Okay,
So
do I need one of those little signs in front of my house?
you will end up getting a sign in front of your house,
How do I
yes.
get that?
Don't you feel lucky and special?
How do I get that little sign? That comes from you?
Yeah.
So you'll reach out to me and tell me to? Okay, very good. All right.
Full service. So, with that, I'll entertain a motion to schedule public hearing for next month for this application.
Motion.
Motion by Karen,
Second?
second by Kevin, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we will also entertain a motion to authorize Jennifer's office to draft resolution for our consideration also next month.
Motion.
Motion by Karen,
Second?
second by Kevin, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
See you next month. Thank you. Okay, where did we leave off? That completes our regular agenda. We're at miscellaneous business. We'll switch back to an requested extension for, consider request for an extension of amended site plan approval 2 Cross Street submitted by Hudson. Oh, that's been withdrawn.
Yeah.
Jesus, it's in bold letters here. I don't know why I'm reading it. Sorry. So we talked about the request to review a revised, no, we didn't talk about this.
No,
You were-
that's the
you were
one
on
we
that
did
one.
not talk
Yep.
about during
So,
work
but we didn't
session.
also finish the other part of our conversation, did we?
I thought we did, but if
Oh.
there's more that you want to talk.
There was just a 248.
We did, okay.
Yeah, so
we will
I-
go
No,
to-
we didn't do the city council, the dimensional regulations.
That was the T district,
That we
Oh,
did.
that was.
the
Yeah.
townhouses. Yeah, so we talked about all 3 local laws.
Right. So
and
then that
we-
brings us back to item number 2 under
Yeah.
miscellaneous business, right?
Yeah.
Which is city council request to review a revised concept site plan for 248 Tyrone Avenue. Again, just give us a bit of a background here on why this amendment is coming from the city council.
So we have the applicant here tonight, who can give a brief summary of what they're proposing to the city council as far as the concept plan application goes. In a nutshell, they have an approval for a 2-story office building for one of the buildings on the site. They're looking to change that to a 3-story, all residential building.
So-
That is going to require either a variance or a code change to allow the increased density. Right now, there's a cap on density.
Yep.
This would exceed it. My understanding is the city council is discussing introducing a local law that would allow for that increased density. I think the question that the council, there's a couple questions that the city council would like the planning board to weigh on specifically. If there is no non-residential component to the application, should that be the case? Should all the non-residential be waived? If it is, what should it be replaced with? Should it be all residential, or should it be something different? And if it is waived, it would have to be exchanged with some kind of public benefit. My understanding is one of the discussions that has been had before the city council is to have an increased number of BMR units, below market rate units, above and beyond the 10% that would normally be required by code, something along the lines of 20%. So is that a public benefit that the planning board would find beneficial? Or is there some other public benefit that the planning board might suggest to the city council in the event that this concept moves forward?
So, okay, so 2 questions. How does this tie into that amendment we were just talking about at the, in the workshop?
The amendment that we talked about in the workshop would allow the city council or the planning board, depending upon who the approval authority ends up being, would allow an adjustment in the timing of the COs. So right now, the applicant cannot, this particular applicant cannot get a CO for the residential units that are constructed until the non-residential component is constructed. The local law that was referred to you would allow a waiver for that, would allow the CO for the residential units to be issued even though the non-residential construction is not complete. So,
And then thank you.
yeah, so it
second
doesn't have
question-
anything to do with the waiver of
I get it.
the non-residential component.
Jennifer, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't hear back from your office. Am I still recused?
Oh,
from
yes,
this
you are.
matter?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Natalie, yeah.
I just wasn't sure if it was different because it was a referral by the council.
No.
Okay, I'm recused from the matter because I work with the development company in other municipalities.
Clear, thank you.
Thank
Have
you,
a nice
Natalie.
evening.
I forgot about that.
Lucky.
Have a nice night.
My other question then was, maybe this is more for the applicant, what is the path from an approved and clearly understood approval through a long series of time spent, months, time by the board, well-considered, well-thought-out application, to now this appeal to the city council? What is that path? I want to understand why.
Well, so the last time we were with you guys here at the planning board, we had discussed how we had the last amended site plan was essentially, I'll call it the Greenway Trail revision amended site plan.
Yep.
So because buildings 200 and 300 are under construction, as you know, it was imperative to get that Greenway Trail, which was also under construction, revised and approved in that form. And at that time, initially we actually had it on the plans, was the extension of the Greenway Trail onto the island within the Fishkill Creek. So that was acknowledging that, the marketing of the office space had not succeeded. We've provided a justification to the city council. We can share some of that information with you guys if you would like. But essentially, the long and short of it is, post-COVID, office space is just not in demand, and particularly this site, which is quite a ways from Main Street, within a residential area, it's even less desirable for potential future tenants. So the rezoning that had been done previous to COVID, was becoming pretty problematic from a sense of making this a mixed-use development. But we didn't want the review of that conversion to hold up 200 and 300. So while the discussion is had with the city council and the planning board, we're seeking the ability to get the COs for 200 and 300, so we can have that discussion and get that approved in the kind of on a separate track.
So hang on, I'm seeing the CO item very differently it's separate to what we're talking about now, and that is the conversion of use.
So yeah, it'll be two resolutions. So the first one being the CO, local law, and then separately will be the density.
So again,
question.
I'll ask the question, why and how did this come to pass? So I heard reference to market conditions, not necessarily conducive to commercial. And I'm sure you made this case to the city council, or we wouldn't be sitting here. Why?
So I guess there's the why and why this way. So the why is the market conditions. So
Explain.
Well, the office space it's been marketed for a number of years now, and there's just been no tenant interest in it.
The why is, I'm not understanding exactly what the question of the why.
Why the request for the conversion of use from commercial to residential? Why?
Because there's no movement on commercial.
Okay, why?
Zero.
What's the case? And what's the case you made to the city council? Because I'm sure you had to have made some case, other than the market's just not responding to whatever.
So they asked us to get, who we asked to market it, and so we got letters from the realtors that marketed for the last 3 years. So I have several letters, and some of them just contesting that they won't even market it because of it. I mean, that's in the conversations. But that's the reality. We started the site. There was a lot of infrastructure into the site, and when this was originally approved, it had a certain amount of units, 2 buildings. It got stripped from the approvals, and we went back to the drawing board, and we actually believed that a commercial building at that location would be a good office place.
What changed from when you made the investment in that application, which took a significant amount of time and was aligned to the zoning? What changed from your thinking about the opportunity of commercial there through all of that period of time up until an approval in its current configuration to now?
It got approved in 2019, way before COVID.
So what you're saying is that the market is such that because of COVID, no one wants to lease commercial down by the creek?
1,000%. 100%. We have office buildings.
I heard what you said, okay.
That's just a given for right now. Will that change eventually? Maybe. At that location, I was maybe even naive to think that that's a location that's a desired location. I just don't think that that commercial building could produce.
Well, there's two different things that you don't think than real material data that some sources sharing with you that the market is simply not responding to some marketing effort. And again, I'm not clear on what that is. I don't know if you necessarily have to go into that. Obviously, the city council listened to you and heard you enough to say, hey, planning board, look at reversing this zoning in this particular instance, so that all of that, again, careful study, careful thought, careful review of what, at least in my opinion, for this particular zone and this particular site is an appropriate mixed use complement, right?
I agree with you. At that time, I did. I agreed.
Okay. So anyway, I've asked you the question why. You've answered. I'm not convinced, but somehow the city council was. So thank you for entertaining the questions. With that, is there anything else just from the applicant you'd like to share with us?
Again, we're doing significant improvements for public improvements on this property.
So would removing the light poles be one of those?
Removing the light poles is not for the public. That's something that
I would submit it is, because it's an eyesore.
It's an
eyesore,
public,
and it was not a part of the original application.
Again,
also the mechanical units on the roof. That's an alteration you're going to make. That was not approved originally.
Well, there's pieces to it coming. There's a planters that's coming in front of that. That's being built.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. So you're done with whatever you wanted to share with us as far as this particular request?
We made in City Council that I was going to go through. We've planning board eyes it to a certain extent. We just discussed most of the revisions to the site plan, so I'll keep it brief. But
so I'm sorry. I'm reading your sort of use case, right? Or this justification for proposed conversion of use, and I'm sorry I missed this earlier.
Additional information provided. So you're talking about from the cover letter.
It says, yeah, demand for office space has greatly been diminished since in this site. Again, I never really considered this just a potential office use. There's a commercial component potentially.
Yeah, so the letters from the brokers, real estate brokers, do go into the fact that office is not, just because it's approved as an office space doesn't mean that's the only possibility as a commercial use.
So that begs the question: was the marketing just around office space, or was there a broader effort by your crack realtors to understand a potential need in the market for other commercial?
I believe the marketing was to the office space because the.
So you're saying no other case has been made for any other kind of commercial?
Well, they essentially said retail was not feasible at that location.
Okay, so they're telling you neither commercial retail or commercial office is feasible, is what you're saying?
retail wasn't almost in the question in nobody's mind from, as far as retailers. In
Okay,
that-
thank you. Okay, so what else do we have to do on this?
So on the concept plan referral, you would need to give your comments back to the city council on the concept plan. They've scheduled a public hearing on the concept plan for next week. So they'd be looking for your comments. The second thing on the concept plan is there needs to be a secret review done for these changes. The planning board served as lead agency in the last couple rounds, so the thought was that the planning board would continue in its role as lead agency. The city council has preemptively consented to your role as continuing as lead agency here.
So correct me if I'm wrong, right? So there's a concept plan we're supposed to be looking at tonight that is, it's requiring our review and right now, our review and comment so that we can get something back to the city council by the 19th. So in, whatever time we have now to completely sort of change the character of an application that we spent years looking at with this applicant. I'm sorry, I'm calling BS. I don't get it. And it's really upsetting. And that's not for you, okay? That's for anyone else who's listening to this. So this board member, and I don't know how we make it public other than the fact that it's recorded, and I'm not sure if Mercedes wants to put this in the minutes, or whether we want to convey this back to the city council, but I'm really upset by this. I'm really upset that the city is putting us in this position.
Can I make one suggestion, and Jennifer can tell me if I'm not doing things by the book?
Okay.
Would it be possible to, because ultimately the first step, we understand that the change of use is going to be the bigger discussion. So my thought, but timing-wise, the most pressing thing is the question of the CO timing, to be able to allow the COs for 200 and 300 while we continue the discussion on 100.
So yeah, that's a separate item. The discussion that's happening right now is just on the concept plan. There's a separate local law on the timing issue that was discussed during workshop, and will be confirmed and discussed again after we finish the concept plan to make sure that we have the comments accurate. But yeah, that is a separate agenda item, and it's proceeding on separate tracks.
What's the concept plan?
So the concept plan is, I have the revised up now, and I have the former plan that was reviewed and approved.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
When you submit,
Mike?
you submit marked up plans like this?
Sorry, we can't hear you.
The plans that I was able to download and take a look at, nothing tells me where it's changing. I've got to search all over the place to see exactly what's
we can
changing.
In addition to the cover letter list, we can also mark up plans. But as discussed, the main change here is the use of Building 100. So with that, an additional floor was added to get to 36 units. So it's 3 stories, and then the back side facing Fishkill Creek is a basement level, a walkout basement level. The parking is reduced for the site overall because the office use required additional spaces. So I'll flip to the old. If I make this full screen, doesn't want to do that. All right, page down. This whole center area here half of it was parking, and then the other half was land-based parking, so potentially also parking. Because of the residential use, all of that parking can be removed. There was revised landscaping provided where we maintained all the landscaping on the, I always get north wrong, on the northwest and south, south here. Most of the landscaping on the east side was removed. Well, I shouldn't say removed, it was relocated to that south side so that the building entrance was landscaped a little better. And this whole center area would essentially be like a public lawn area. The other main change that we kind of previewed the last time we were here was this extension of the Greenway Trail to provide a boardwalk over to the island within the Fishkill Creek. And we have a couple of notes here that you guys have actually already seen because this was initially prepared for the city council and they hadn't seen that as a former review. And then there's just 3 bollards at each building were added just to provide some additional lighting in the rear. And the 7 land bank spaces became 5, again, because of the reduced parking needs for the site. Kind of hard to tell here. You can see this dashed line here is a greenway, or not a greenway, sorry, a grading easement. It's within the MTA right away, so that will be applied for with the MTA, but that's in order to remove a retaining wall in that location. But besides that, it's everything.
You reviewed all this with the city council?
Sorry?
You reviewed all this with the city council?
Yes, this was the 99% the same.
Can you summarize the feedback you got from the city council?
Seemed receptive. I mean, I say it was.
Sorry.
I personally wasn't at the city council meeting, to be honest. But yeah.
Basically the same presentation, and you know, we said to them we're willing to listen, and we're doing a lot of different things that are going to be very beneficial to the public.
Can you summarize the feedback by the city council?
That housing is more needed than office space right now in Beacon, and they are open to listen what the proposal is.
Did they characterize what kind of housing they thought was more needed in Beacon?
Yes, affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
Whatever, workforce housing,
Yep.
and smaller units. So there's, you know, and I said we would work with them to see that's why we're going back to them, and it's going to be another meeting to see of what we can do, and that benefits everybody. I
So
mean,
you're in conversation with them about this change with the potential for, I guess it sounds like an increase in required low-income workforce housing than would normally be required. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's there's 2 ways that, what the code is, from what I understood, the code, what it says in the code is that if it's a substantial public benefit, that the commercial would be either eliminated or reduced. I'm not
Okay,
quoting
so,
exactly.
so describe what you've sold to the city council as what that substantial public benefit is.
So that substantial public benefit is to do a series of public park amenities along the Greenway Trail and substantial investments. And we're not talking about investments of $20,000 or $50,000. We're talking about investments of close to $500,000 to $600,000 in real parks.
What kind of improvements and benefits does that $500,000 buy the public?
The island is going to become a real park to actually go there and enjoy the waterfront. We're looking to put up a tree house, which we will have renderings right off the path and also we put in a stadium seating benching on the edge of the dam for, you know, that can handle substantial amount of people sitting over there.
And these are all things that you shared with the city council?
That is correct.
And what was their feedback?
They were very receptive, I believe.
They were what?
Receptive that these things are, believe it's something that it's.
So what you're saying is that you heard from the city council, this is something that they think the city needs, and the public could really benefit from. That this is a substantial public benefit? That's what they told you?
I walked it today with Tom Wright, and he believes that as well.
Tom Wright's not on the city council.
Yeah, I'm just saying what my.
I'm asking you to summarize and characterize what, in your presentation of these substantial public benefits to the city council, how they responded. And you said they were receptive.
That was one part, and the other part was that we would give them some more workforce housing. What percentage of workforce housing?
What percentage?
We didn't discuss a percentage. We said we're going to make a proposal to them of what
Okay,
percentage.
so, thank you. What does the city need from us right now? In these few, this limited time frame that we have? Because quite honestly, I'm almost prepared to personally, as this board member, convey to the city that we do not have the time to adequately review this, study it and understand it, so that we can, as we did with the original application, and as we do with every single application, spend the appropriate time to study, understand, and then really thoughtfully act on it.
So what they're looking for from you is your comments to them on the referral for the concept plan. City
my
Council
comment.
is the approval authority
Board
on the
does not
concept
have,
plan.
the board does not have adequate time to study and understand this, and to adequately respond. We don't have time, sorry. That's it.
The
Yeah,
second thing.
please.
One other thing, and it's not, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying at all, is some of these changes don't just affect this project, but they affect contemplated projects, and I think that's one reason to go slow and to take this, consider it very closely. The other issue for me is that when we have requirements, and we've been fairly insistent about following through on the requirements we've requested, the public benefits and other things. And I think it's benefited the city, and I think it hasn't put anybody out of business, in my opinion, right? For a lot of the things that we've done, it's improved our quality of life. When you propose that, I don't want to make this sound bad, but when you have failed to meet one of the requirements that we've had, and you propose that you'll get rewarded with something more valuable, that doesn't seem proportionate to me, right? And so I would have a problem with that, in that future projects and other projects throughout the city might, they might not take us seriously if we have things that we want to have happen in the city, planning-wise.
Well said. What are your thoughts?
I honestly am not sure.
Not a lot of time to kind of digest this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, from first blush, it seems that there's a lot of commercial possibility that hasn't been examined from your brief description of the marketing that you've done. There are many other uses that could be considered. And I don't think that this change of use is something that we should go so lightly into for precedent-setting issues.
Thank you.
So the second piece is authorizing circulation of notice of intent to continue in your role as lead agency for the secret review.
Honestly, if the city council wants to entertain this and review it and direct the applicant, they should act as lead agency. They've taken this on, they've put us in this position. They should act as lead agency, quite honestly. I just, in all my days, I've been doing this a long time, the planning board's never been squeezed like this.
I understand.
It's just, I mean, I can do this a long time. This is the first time I've actually ever seen anything like this, and you can tell, it's irritating me.
I'm not sure
So,
what, but
look, I'm sorry, I'm talking mainly to the city council right now. So, and look, there's other things about your application that irritate me, but that's a different conversation, and I alluded to them. Things that were, we'll get to that later. Bruce knows all about them. So, at this point, quite honestly, I don't know if I can, or we can, as the board, refuse to circulate notice to, of intent to act.
It's your decision, whether you, it's your decision,
That's
whether to
my
continue
position.
in your role as lead
I
agency
don't want to,
or let
steamroll
another.
these guys, but I don't know how you guys feel as well.
Is it prudent? I mean, they don't usually do secret reviews, right?
Hey, let them
I'm
try.
not saying it's
Let
not
them
a bad
try, because
strategy or anything.
right now they're playing planning board. So if they want to keep playing planning board, let them.
Yeah. Also, this, maybe I don't think this was initiated by individual council members, if that's worth anything. Right?
May have not been initiated, but we're,
No, it's an application, just like any other, property owner filing an application, seeking approvals under our code. That's,
so let me ask you something. So the applicant went to the city council to make an appeal for,
they applied for concept, so in the Fishkill Creek Development District, remember, we have concept
Yep,
plan
I understand
approval and the
concept.
site plan approval. Concept plan is
Yep.
city council, so they made an application for concept plan approval. They
Right.
appeared at the city council, as required by the code, referred the concept plan to you for your comments.
and they're
before they
asking,
move
they're
forward.
asking for our comments on this site plan, this
On the
concept plan back
Correct,
for their meeting on the 19th.
right. The timing is unfortunate.
And that's,
Yeah,
quite
it's-
honestly, that's what's sticking with me the most.
Yeah,
Is, and again, look,
yeah.
I'm most irritated by things other than, the timing, but the timing puts us in a really challenging spot. Because, there are aspects to this that just don't smell right. And, again, I'm not blaming the city council for the timing, but I'm also of the mind that if this now falls to us, as it does, we need more time. It's as simple as that.
If it falls to you as far as what, the seeker review, or?
Any of it. Any
So
of
the
the
site plan
any of
will
the
be
process
within
of the
your,
next steps.
yeah, the site plan, once they get concept plan approval, they'll be before you for site plan review. That is your approval authority. So,
But we've made it pretty clear that we don't agree with the concept. And that is our recommendation to the,
I think that's what, the four of you will need to come to a consensus. I've heard
Let's make it
there's
clear
no
if
comments
that's the
because we
case.
don't have time to
Yeah.
render comments. Then there's some comments about the concept plan, but ultimately, since we only have 4 members of the board here, all 4 of you will have to agree on what the message back to the city council is.
And is our
Whether
role
it's-
done then? Because one thing
No.
John is saying, like, so it's
No.
not, right?
It'll come back to us.
It will, if you say that, and for concept plan, if you say we don't have time to provide comments now, we'll have this on the agenda for the next meeting. It's not like the referral just ends. At some point, you'll have to give
what is the
some
deadline?
kind of
Why is there
substantive.
such a deadline?
Because the city council set a public hearing for next week. So typically, they want the comments back before they open the
Well, maybe
public
that will
hearing.
be
so they-
informative as well, the
Yeah,
public comments.
Well, they could keep that public hearing open.
Yeah.
they can, yeah,
Yeah, they could.
they can.
So, let's take this a step at a time.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, no one else, I'm being somewhat facetious, no one else is going to act as lead agency, so we should at least start with that. So we'll talk about authorizing notice of intent to act as lead agency. Let's do that first. So I'll accept a motion.
Motion.
Motion by Karen.
Second.
Second by
David.
David, I'm so sorry. All in favor? Aye. And then let's just talk about the steps. So yes, the city council is going to hold a public hearing on the 19th. And I'm of the mind to say, unfortunately, the only comments potentially that we can share, and again, this is for open discussion, are, one, the ability for us to offer substantive comments back on the concept plan as represented this evening is severely limited. And therefore, we can only go far as to say that we have a number of questions around the, I'm trying to find the best word for this. A number of questions around the case-making or the rationale for the zoning change.
So the zoning change
I'm
is...
sorry, I meant to say that the site application
Okay.
change.
Yeah, so sort of folded into this concept plan is the provision in the Fishkill Creek Development District that says the city council can reduce the amount of non-residential square footage that's otherwise required in that district, as long as there's a substantial public benefit provided. So I think it sounds like what you're saying is you're looking for a little bit more of justification as far as what that substantial public benefit
Well,
is.
there's that, right? So I don't currently have an idea of what that substantial public benefit is. It's not clear. I'm not sure if it is clear to the rest of us.
Not from what was been submitted, no. There was-
So, right, so understanding that, that's part of the balancing act of by code, what is, allowed to be considered relative to the reduction with the introduction of some substantial public benefit. It's just not clear enough to me how it rises to the level of substantial public benefit. What rises to the level of substantial public benefit? I haven't heard anything to that effect currently. So it poses that challenge for our ability to share anything other than that. I hope I've spoken well for the board.
It really seems like the driving factor behind this is the perception that commercial rates or commercial demand isn't enough to make this viable.
Well,
I don't know that we're really I'm not in a position to evaluate that. If that is true, does that factor into a substantial public benefit analysis? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the
throwing it out
relationship, but go ahead, sorry.
Well, just if you've either got commercial space that you're not able to rent or lease out, or alternatively, the businesses that you're getting in there are not ones that you want around, frankly. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it was part of what I was asking the applicant about earlier. It's just like, help us understand what whatever efforts, whatever metrics, whatever market, data, it just doesn't ring true. It doesn't make sense to me. And I don't know whether that's even germane. This idea that an applicant is simply saying, and you may have shared data or some really compelling market-based, data-driven, other than realtors just saying, nobody wants it, case for why commercial in this area, on this site, is not viable, or not. What I'm hearing is that it's not economically viable because some ethereal sense that somehow since COVID the market is just loose. It may be, but I'm not convinced, right? So convince me. If you can convince the council, then you can convince us. So, and again, I'm speaking now sort of more as a resident than the planning board chair, because, this bait and switch is, and again, it may all just be genuine and, whoops, we actually spent quite a bit of money on something that we thought would be financially viable and it wasn't. And now the only thing that's financially viable is a lot more residential. And of course, the only thing that would be really financially viable is a lot more market rate residential. So we'll talk about maybe a few extra, low income, but we really need the revenue because we kind of screwed up here. That's what it sounds like to me. And oh, by the way, we put up light poles that, shouldn't have been there. They weren't approved on the approved plan, that we spent a lot of time studying, reviewing, and then approving. And there's these mechanical units on the building that, it was just an afterthought, we forgot, and they weren't on the plan either. There's a quality of this that's not, in my view, and I'm speaking now as a resident, that's not on the up and up, and it's not honest, and I don't like that. And that's what I'm most irritated about. So there, I said it. So now I'm back with my planning board chair hat on. So,
Let me just address the polls. Number one, we had no idea about it. This was something that Central Hudson did in their plan, and it might have been an oversight, but an oversight as far as we knew that we are doing underground services from the building to Central Hudson, wherever they're locating us the poles. And we did not know, and they had an easement, not an easement, they sold us the piece of property. There was a story to it. It's not just like this is what we wanted. And we worked hard in the last couple of weeks to revise that, and hopefully we got that revised in the last day or two. So that was one.
So
The air conditioning-
fair enough, that's helpful. So you're saying, without your knowledge, Central Hudson came in and put those poles up? That's what you're selling?
My knowledge of trying is just like, I wouldn't worry about where the power is coming from. My point of entry was, this is where you put your end boxes, and this is where we're picking it up from. And I had no idea what that meant and what what they could do and what they can do. When Bruce came in and addressed it and opened up I says, well, and I said, you know what, I don't like the poles on the property. That wasn't a choice that I had, and I was trying to make that. I'm trying to get power. We have two buildings that are completely finished, and we have no power for it. And not knowing, if not, we worked around the clock trying to figure this out, what to do, how to do this, and whether it's a cost to get power. We have no power. So that's
Okay.
number one with the poles.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Second thing is with the air conditioning, we are doing the rooftop accessories right now. And what's going to happen was always the plan. You just don't see it yet because there's planters coming with I don't know what they call it,
There's supposed to be wood screening.
screening that comes in front of that and that whole
We had a
length.
long discussion about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's other planters on the other side. There's a bunch of planters that we're spending on planters. Most probably, I don't even want to know the number of it, but it's a lot. I mean, it's actually anybody would be invited. I would walk with the property, anybody, and to show you what we're talking about, the Greenway Trail. And I'm going to go into it again. I spent a lot of time with Tom because I actually believe in it, of what we're doing over there and what it does. And we're spending a substantial amount of money. And I believe that this property and all of these things that we're doing is we're doing for the public use, and we're putting that into the easement. And this is something that I believe spending time on the High Line, spending time on all these other parks of what this becomes. I believe just like people are coming to the Beacon Mountain, they're going to be coming to that trail. And that's something I said over here, and you'll see that in the days coming, especially eventually when it's going to get connected all the way down to 555 or even going down to all the way. I'm in love with this trail, so this is something that I do with passion. I'm sorry that there's a lot of things that come in and going this way or that way, and you're thinking that I'm doing something, not this. We marketed with Brian Massey for years We have a bunch of office tenants in Poughkeepsie, and we have commercial tenants in Newburgh. We know what the commercial industry is over here. I know that I cannot find a tenant for this. And, you know, I came down to this wire that with the Greenway Trail, there was a lot of things that, I'm not saying that I'm perfect in keeping up with every detail, but this is how this job was a very tough infrastructure job, and there's a lot of details to this job, and we try doing our best. Is it possible, you know, with COVID involved in the middle of this job from when we started, to pick up the pieces? It's a draining job. It's a job that I would rather not be involved right now, but you know, we here, you know, my reputation, I'm going to be here to finish it, and even with this other Building 100, I'm going to come, and that's exactly why it's important the COs to finish the COs for the first two buildings. So first of all, the tenants can start moving in, and the interest won't eat us up as it ate us up already throughout this project because of higher interest rate. We want to come back. We want to see what's the best benefit to do with this, and I'm going to be here to listen, and whatever I have to do, I have to do. I can't put in commercial if I can't put it in. I can put up the shell. It'll cost me much less money than an interest to put up a shell, and it's going to be an empty shell, and do this simultaneously thing. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to come back to see housing is more needed than that, and to see what we can offer, and you know, do the best we could, and you know, make sure that this project is completed, and everybody enjoys it.
Thank you. I appreciate that context. Thank you.
And I have to tell you, you're not the first developers to complain about how Central Hudson delivers their services to their properties. I think they do a terrible job in general.
Yeah, so, yeah, if that's the case, the fact that Central Hudson came in and actually had the time to put in, I don't know how many light pole, or what do you call those things?
We've been waiting for that for, what, over a year. They promised us that they're coming, and not knowing what they're planning. And by the way, it wasn't on the site plan. We didn't even know about it, and they just basically, the only thing that I do know is that they sold us, not us, Peter, the old previous owner, Peter DeRose, when he bought from them that piece of land, it came with that they have the right to put their equipment on that land. That was something that they had as an easement on the land. So, you know, I didn't know what the legalities of what they had.
Understood.
And,
Thank you.
Hopefully, you know, I know that, Bruce, you got the new drawings for today. Hopefully that's... Yeah, all right. So,
Okay.
hopefully that's...
Thanks, and appreciate your patience with me, especially. So as far as what we're sharing back to the city council for their use on the 19th, we have what we need?
So what I have
Yep.
from your discussion, and you can tell me if I've got it right, and
Yep.
we need all four to agree, is that your opportunity for comment is limited due to the scheduled public hearing prior to your next meeting, that there are significant changes proposed in eliminating the mixed-use component of the concept plan that the planning boards has spent, you know, many years reviewing. You're not clear on the substantial public benefit being offered as required by the code to allow for the reduction of the non-residential component. We discuss a Greenway Trail extension and an undefined increase in BMR units in terms of the public benefit required by the code.
Okay. You're so good at what you do. Thank you. You took all of my, whatever you want to call it, and condensed it down rather nicely. Thank you.
Okay. Was that, did anybody else have any?
You guys in agreement?
I thought those were the points, yes.
Okay.
Bluster, that's what it is, forgive me. So we will then act to, whatever you want to call it.
Second, to send those comments to
Convey
the
those
city
comments to
council
the city council.
on
So
the
I'll have a motion.
Motion.
Motion by Kevin,
Sorry.
Second.
second by Karen, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there anything else
Yeah, we
Do
do.
we
We
need to
have
do
more stuff.
notice of intention?
On this application.
Did that. No.
Authorization of circulation.
We acted on that, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yep,
Oh, we did? Okay.
yep, right?
You voted.
Okay, so,
Good night, everybody.
thank you. Thank you.
And just to, can we circle back to the three
Yes.
local laws, just to make sure that I have your comments? And we take a vote to send those comments to the city council as well. So on the soil stabilization local law, the comment I had from the board is that you're generally in favor.
Yeah.
And that was it. Okay. Generally in favor. So we would need a motion and a second to send
We're
out
gonna
that
do that with
comment.
each of those, okay.
Yeah.
So, we'll,
Would you call it a sense of the board? What would you call it? Just a motion that,
We need a motion and a second to send that comment that you're generally in favor
Oh, okay.
of the proposed local law
yeah,
to the city
motion to send the
council.
comment.
motion by Kevin,
Second.
second by Karen, all in favor?
Aye.
Then with respect to the T district, dimensional regulation local law, again, generally in favor, but consider adding setback reductions as appropriate, and make sure they're contextual to the adjacent district.
Yeah.
We'll entertain a motion to convey, as read by Jennifer.
Motion.
Motion by, why can't, David, I don't know what it is. I know
Second.
you. I know your name. I've known you for a long time.
I do, it's happened to me all the time, yeah.
I do that, but it's not just you. I do that with my kids. I do that with people, other people. I'm sorry.
I mean, I still call my daughter my younger sister's name like 2 or 3 times a year.
I call my cat my daughter's name. It's bad. It's getting old. Sorry.
Second.
Sorry.
Second.
Second by Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the last local law is the Fishkill Creek Development one, about the timing of the CO for the residential, non-residential, and your comments there where we need a better definition of good cause.
Yeah.
Better standard.
Yep. Again, you
and
do a
on-
great job of like condensing all of our blather into nice, concise language. Thank you.
There's
Wait,
probably
do we
more
want,
to
do we
that.
want to go further with
Do you
that?
want-
I didn't
yeah.
really get
Do you
whether there
want
was a
to?
consensus on this or not, but definitely my sentiment was, and I'm not, when I say that this is my sentiment, I have not reached a conclusion on the ultimate question, but the idea that this proper cause thing for the order of the COs is kind of, like a head in the sand approach. I mean, either the approach is solid or it's not. If the approach is solid, we shouldn't be doing this proper costing. If it's not, we also shouldn't be doing the proper costing.
Yeah.
So are you saying either have the requirement and stick to it, or eliminate the requirement altogether?
Yeah, I don't really
Yeah.
see the point of putting in a specific exception for proper cause on the order the COs are issued in,
Then it's just.
when this just seems to be going to, well, we're not really sure if it's actually good to have this, the mixed-use model.
I think it undermines the entire intent of the
Yeah.
district
100%,
to give, there's no incentive for a developer to follow through on the requirements of the district. Or very little incentive,
You could
let's
get
say.
a letter from anyone
And
to substantiate
getting
efforts.
that sort of documentation, like financial backups that you're giving to people, you're really incentivizing people to sort of fudge things a little bit. And any developer who doesn't is put at a disadvantage. So it's actually not fair to the developer or to the public, because there's so many ways to hedge and all those financials, right? That in a public setup, I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's to ask people to show their pro formas and all that other nonsense, or give letters from their favorite brokers and all this other stuff. It should be one or the other. There should be clear, right? It should be based on clear stuff, or it should be not subject to that kind of interpretation, right?
Yeah.
I
So-
agree. I totally agree. I mean, there's a code, and
Now, That doesn't need to go into our recommendation, but the other question is whether or not, if there's one, if there's, oh God, I don't want to broach this in a way, but like, can that be held in reserve, right? Allowing him to get a C of O for the residential portion, he's already completed, right? We didn't discuss that, but it's something that might want to be discussed, is how does that happen? How does it affect other projects? How does it, is it something where we don't need to change the zoning, right?
I'm sorry, I missed, can we do
make an
what?
exception in this case
Yeah.
for just this one thing, because, oh my God, everything's crazy and whatever?
That would be a
then he would
variance.
That would be a variance.
Yeah.
And that would have to go through a normal variance process.
Yes.
And nobody's asking us to do that
No, but they did
That's-
ask for a variance.
previously,
That
and
exact
they were denied.
variance.
Exactly.
It wasn't denied,
Yes.
they just withdrew it.
They withdrew it.
Yeah.
When it was clear, or whatever, yeah, as it happens.
Sorry, so I'm just curious, if I asked this before, forgive me, but do we understand the context by which the city council came to entertain and then draft this?
I don't know for sure.
But they have to, because if they're presented with an application, they have to hear the application. They have to go through the,
No, I'm talking about this particular
The
law.
timing.
The
Yeah,
timing
because
thing.
this is, sort of operates separately from.
Yeah, I mean, it's relevant because this
It is.
applicant has this,
Who
But
drafted
it-
the motion to go before the board? Was that an administrative thing? Who put it on the agenda? Who? was
That's governed by the
Right.
city council and the city administrator.
That's what I'm saying.
And then our
so
office
one of
is
the,
told
one of the
what,
city council
you know,
members
to
decided that
draft
this
local
was.
that
laws
it was timely,
consistent
that
with
it
their.
was
yeah.
that it was of importance that it be done very
Yeah.
quickly.
So,
I
yeah,
assuming.
don't know I don't know about any discussion about timing and
Okay.
whether it was instructed to be done quickly or not. I don't
Okay.
know. Yeah.
maybe that's a good
don't-
thing. You don't know.
Sometimes I'm thankful that
I don't know.
I sit with one board and not all of them.
I'm sorry. I hate it when I get like this, but there's just something about this whole thing that just stinks. And I know, as a impartial board, we're not supposed to say that kind of stuff, but it's just something wrong.
So I think if I understand that the new comment, or maybe not new comment, but sort of more fleshed out comment, that
I think it's
you may be in favor of not including this amendment at all. Just leave it as is, because to include this relief valve, it undermines the mixed-use
Yeah.
purpose
Yes,
of
no,
the
I-
district.
yes,
However,
I-
if they're going to proceed with it, define good cause.
Yeah.
Define good cause. In the
Yep.
big picture, does it still make sense to push mixed use here? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
I think that
I-
is a
I'm not
larger-
saying it doesn't make sense to still push
Yeah.
mixed use, but I'm saying that is the actual underlying question here.
You're exactly
Yeah.
right, whether mixed use is still valid here. I still firmly believe it is. And I really don't believe this, whatever ethereal, the market just didn't cooperate. 'Cause
And it's not our judgment. Personally, if I was doing this, I would hold that in reserve, and then when somebody offered me, wanted to build a medical office building or something of high value, right? That was an opportunity that was just sitting there pre-approved. If I was a developer, I don't think he's not necessarily, it's just deferred. He doesn't, it's just a deferred approval. That would be if you wanted to be generous and not obstructive or whatever, that would be one solution to it. But that's not for us to say, and that's not what the question that's being asked.
Yep, okay. So that, it sounds like we have that agreed to. So then motion to convey language as just discussed.
motion.
Motion by Karen,
Second.
second by David. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so that completes our business.
Sorry for the next person.
I know, I get grumpier as the night wears on.
I should go
Sorry?
have a small sidebar afterward.
Yeah,
Not quorum.
I honestly, I can't pinpoint what exactly about this whole thing just rubs me the wrong way, but it's obvious that it does. I don't know. So, we're going to go to our architectural review. Certificates of appropriateness, we have two. The first one is a new single-family house at 925 Walcott Avenue. Hi. I sure hope so. Oh, you were with us the last month. Yes, hi, welcome back. And thank you again.
It's been a long night, so thank you for reviewing our application.
You ain't seen nothing yet. But yes, thanks again for sitting through all of that. And thanks for coming back.
You're welcome.
So just refresh me, or us, the board, we talked about a few things last month, and they were more in the sort of category of kind of details, refinements, right?
Right, what you have are our architect's renderings and floor plans, which came to us via email while we were sitting here last month, and it just wasn't, it wasn't, adequate for you to review. So now you have them to review. One of the comments that I'll remind you that we discussed was the roof line on the porch, and you have two versions that we've submitted. One, the porch roof is a hip roof, and the other is a shed roof with the ends enclosed, which was what your comment was. We would like to submit both to the client and have the client decide what they prefer, but we wanted you to look at them both and get your comments.
You'd like us to like them both equally?
No.
Interesting. So who goes first here in this game of chicken?
I vote for the hip roof.
Boom. That's exactly what I was going to say.
That's my
Is that your favorite?
It's not, and I'll tell you why. Although it's a subtle thing. That's his. My comment is, I think the hip would look better, be more appropriate if the porch extended beyond the plane of the facade of the house, or wrapped around. It bothers me a little where the hip ends up, where the peak of the hip ends up under that window. But these are subtleties that
they really are. And
do
quite
either
honestly,
look bad. No.
I don't think you're going to see that from
No.
standing on the ground.
No, you're not.
So,
And honestly, the way I look at this is, if you're sharing both of these options with your client, both are quite acceptable. So, but this is interesting. We've never had this scenario before where we're approving two.
well, or not, or
Well, is there one you prefer? You want us to deny one?
We actually disagree about it, and the client is going to be their home, so we want their feedback.
Can I give it one?
Yes.
piece of
Yeah,
advice?
yeah,
please.
Okay. It actually resolves for both of them, but you can either, you were talking about wrapping it around, right? It's from lining up porch ends, right, actually looks awkward in 3 dimensions when you're looking at it from when they're lining up. It looks worse when it's a shed, and that's why many people would say the hip is better. But the way you resolve that, you can do either one, is just pull it in like a foot from the corner.
Yeah.
And then you have an outside corner that's shown. You don't have that construction detail of an outside corner hitting a roof and then being awkward. It's a constructional thing. It's easier to construct. You have a vertical line that's 2 stories, and then it breaks up the massing in a more complicated way, right? That also is similar. The reason why I'd want the hip is because you have a hip roof on the top, and then you have a mini-me on the bottom. So what you're doing, like music, right? Classical music, you have like a theme, and then you have an iteration of that theme in a smaller way that's done differently, right? And what you have is you have the cornice, hip, a box, and then this porch is like, and also has a cornice on it, an edge. You're actually doing it very historically. It's not. You're not doing it a mishmash of different styles or anything. You're sort of keeping within a theme, and that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Our designer has conceded, so I would say.
Yeah, Kevin, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I could not have said it better myself.
Okay, so we're asking you to then approve the version with the hip roof on the porch. and that's what we'll present to our board.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't want to delay.
You want to settle the argument?
Yeah, that's it.
There were other houses that, remember the Thompson? There were a whole series of these porches that were like sheds
Oh,
that
yeah.
went to the side. And I was like, it's, we can't really force you to do this, but it really looks awkward to have that intersection of all these planes as if it was cut like a cake or something,
Yeah.
It's like a drawing convention. And one of the reasons why all that traditional carpentry looks nice is because they created a lot of details, because it was actually easier in some ways, and there were waterproofing things, and a lot of those edges and texture that you see had all these functional reasons, because nobody knows how to build traditionally anymore. They have to sort of recreate the variation, Anyway.
To answer your question, we would have, as we are now, strongly recommended. Yeah, great. And again, I think Kevin is absolutely right, and it does resolve for both. If you take it in, I would say no less than a foot on each side. You'd have to kind of readjust your spacing on your columns, but that's fine. And again, the columns don't necessarily need a direct relationship to the windows. That's okay. So, yeah, I'm with Kevin and others that we would strongly recommend the hip. But again, these are minor details, and we really appreciate you taking that extra step. So thank you. Yeah, and you're getting a brand new intersection right in front of you. So
Yeah, for real.
Statue?
they scooched the George Washington head.
Which way is George looking? Is he looking at you guys, or is he looking at the city?
I don't think he's back in yet. No.
It was controversial, because he was like,
He's coming back. They're just
inside.
scooching him over a
See,
little
now
bit.
nobody had a problem.
I think he's going to be looking toward the mountain.
One of the reasons why that road project is delayed by 12 years or whatever is that people were outraged at even thinking about
Yeah.
moving that head. And now, when it was reproposed, everybody was like, oh God, of course
Yeah,
you
it's
put it
great.
to the side. It's sometimes, people get very emotional and sensitive about stuff like that, and sometimes people give in too easy or whatever.
I told him, instead of George, I'm going to see your house coming up the road.
But there's a feeling, there's a total difference in, there's a different statement. If you're looking at everybody as they go by, as like George judging you or whatever, or if you're saying like, when you're leaving, whatever. There's a different vibe about it. And I'm curious, somebody's gonna make that choice. It's not gonna be me. We'll find out about it.
Okay, so with that, we will entertain a motion to approve the application as submitted with hip roof and with hip roof gable ends pulled in by a foot on either side. Foot, okay? And otherwise, all other elements quite appropriate. So, a motion. Motion by Karen.
Second.
Second by David. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Have a
Good luck.
night.
Next up, and I'm assuming that's why you've been sitting here this whole time, Dan. Not that you just love our company so much. No. This entire place just needs a stick of dynamite. This whole place, this whole building. I'm secretly hoping they'll move us into the firehouse once the firehouse is done. No. I was just dreaming about new furniture, new flags, new clock.
I mean, the walls are so
know.
dingy.
Look at this. It's dirty.
It's so dirty.
Anyway. Hey, Dan.
This is,
So this isn't my normal type of thing to be here for, but
Yeah,
I
what
drew
are you
the
doing?
short straw. And I'm trying to help out the team, so.
Took one for the team.
So I have some samples here. I'll be happy to go through anything here. I don't know if this is exactly the same one that you received electronically as.
Yep.
Because I remember seeing a rendering where.
Things look a little, oh,
These are lighter. The cedar is shown lighter.
things look a little darker on this, but it may just be the resolution of the screen.
No, yeah, the siding looks lighter on yours than it does on ours. Ours is very brown.
That may be, and then I think when you see these samples
Yeah,
here,
that's gonna help.
that might help a little bit, actually.
And I gotta ask Dan, these, unfortunately, these, no, well, yeah, go ahead, let's talk about the windows first. I was gonna talk about something else.
Oh, really?
What about the windows? You don't like them?
What is up with the windows?
The what? I'm sorry.
The windows.
What about them?
Anderson 400 double hung black.
You don't like?
That's what you meant.
That's what they're.
Are you talking about like this, Mr. Goss?
All right, sorry. I'll just move on. Yes, yes.
It's dynamic. I was gonna ask about the porch posts.
Yeah.
They look like 2x4s that you just pulled out of like, the aisle at
Is it legal
Home
to use a
Depot.
4x4?
I think what they're showing is it's a pressure treated wood.
Oh, man.
Can you
How-
help us here?
Is this a spec building? Or is this for a client?
This is the Howland Avenue subdivision 39 there. So
Why
this
am I
is
not-
This is the one that
Oh,
was
this is the one we
subdivided?
did. Is this the one that's,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry.
Oh.
At least no one will see it.
Along comes the house.
Yes.
I don't know, man. So it's like,
Help me help you.
well,
Tell me
here's the
what you're
problem.
seeing.
We're self-respecting professionals, right? And not for nothing, but anybody who looks at this, they're going to say, number one, well, some people might be like, woohoo, but others might look at it and be like, ugh, how did the planning board approve that? And I just don't want that on my conscience. I got to sleep at night, Dan. The posts on this porch, they're just wrong. There's no scale, there's no proportion, there's no articulation. And, just the way that it's rendered, it literally looks like, and there's absolutely no reason why you can't have equal spacing of the bays, right? That center post should be in the middle there. Just makes no sense.
Or there should be two of them,
Or there could be two of them, right?
even if you don't need structurally.
Probably proportionally, that would be better.
Yeah,
That's why.
Yeah.
Under the ridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, I'm assuming that has to do with the window, huh?
no,
I think it's not very thought through.
it doesn't matter.
Pencil-thin 4x4 is not blocking anybody's view.
Yeah. And again, right, there's no need for a relationship between the windows and the support for that porch, because they're in a different plane. And the support for the porch just needs to make sense for the porch. So scale, the thickness of those members, they just look flimsy. And I don't mind the finish, but why the change-up?
Why the, I'm sorry.
Why the change-up? It's like, it stands out, it pops for no apparent reason. Why would you bring attention to something like that and highlight it? Especially when it's so anemic. Sorry.
Yeah.
See, I get
I'm not the
grumpier with
building
this stuff.
designer here.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's just taking notes.
So it's very clear.
Okay.
So,
Not my forte.
Yeah.
I don't even know half the stuff you're talking about right
Have you done a lot of woodwork? Because
Yeah.
you've tried to stain lumber,
Why are
right?
there no
Dimensional lumber
windows on the sides?
that's from a lumber yard, or that might be pressure treated, right? It is not gonna go well, not with the
No,
standard
it's gonna
stains.
crack and it's
that
gonna
happen.
be
It's-
nasty. You're gonna wanna wrap
It's
those.
really,
they're gonna look like SHIT
Yeah.
in one season.
yeah, ask your,
Oh, my God.
What's that?
Patrick.
Patrick,
Die.
how that would ever go.
There's like nothing, there's no.
Otherwise, yeah, I mean, I love these houses, the design, these facades with like just one window. I mean, I understand there's a program, there's a plan, but I don't get it. Like, Where's the net?
floor plan, why are there no windows on the left side of the house?
He doesn't know.
Well, could be a kitchen, right, in the
Could be.
one corner.
Could be.
On the right
All we
side.
have are the,
You got garage.
front,
You got garage.
Oh, garage,
Right.
yeah.
I don't have the floor plan.
Yeah, the garage is on the right side.
Yeah, and then on the left side,
It's a kitchen with upper and lower, and they didn't want windows.
probably.
That's my
Anyway.
guess, but.
I don't know. I'm less concerned about that, all right? It's just,
It is an ugly elevation, and it goes to that, putting a roof edge, pitched roof right on the side face, you know, where you're cutting these
Yep.
weird angles, where the roof is ending in an awkward way. There's no transition or overhang.
yeah, again, short of designing this for you, we'll just give you this high-level feedback. So, so what's the timing on this?
As far as I know, they wanted to do it, this year, so.
This year, okay.
Yeah.
So, are you okay coming back next month? Not you, because
I mean-
you already did your turn. With something a little more appropriate for the porch?
So just help me understand,
Okay.
Can you just give me a little
Just walk
bit
you
of
through
a-
it. So from, let's talk
I've
about,
got, the no scale or proportion on the columns there, the thickness.
yeah, no, hang on, let's do this in an organized way. Let's,
Materials of the posts.
yeah, let's talk about the finish first. The finish, whatever you're representing is here, looks natural.
So it's the vinyl siding.
No, of the porch.
Oh, on the porch. Yeah, so what I was told is this is pressure treated wood, so.
God. Pressure treated wood, then, you can't stain pressure treated
Yeah,
wood.
That's really not, that's
No,
just a
it's-
bad
it's-
idea, and I
It would
wouldn't.
be a natural, that's because you.
We're gonna be doing them a favor by not accepting that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a pressure-treated support post, which is then wrapped,
Yes, wrap it.
that's more appropriate, right? That'll help the scale, and it will help the overall life of this thing, right? And then wrapping that with either a hardy or a paintable, I don't know, pine, then the finish becomes the question. So
It should match the doors.
I would think it would, yeah, it would want to match one of the other elements that you have. You're thinking the dark?
Disappear.
Okay. And then there really should be, at least in my world, there should be some articulation, some representation of a base and exactly, a capital. And then again, this is just a minor nitpicky point, but you kind of have here that in addition to the base and the capital, where these then meet this part here, that should have some substance, because that actually is representative of the
Load.
honestly,
It goes to construction. It goes to construction, like, and not to be like a weird, this isn't really a historic house, right? But it is traditionally built, it's stick built,
Yep.
and it's made with a pitched roof and windows and all that other stuff. And unless you're doing like a contemporary thing where you just want it to be abstract masses and you have some expressive thing there, it really, it's valuable and it pays off and it fits in the context to express the construction of it,
Yeah.
right? With trim pieces, waterproofing, the beams, all these other things. And that allows it to even like sort of not very carefully composed houses, let's say, Which I'm not saying, this doesn't need to be the end of the world. It's a simple residential building.
Yeah, no, look, and just those moves alone, Dan, will make a big difference on this elevation. There's other kooky things going on, but we don't have all night, and we'll live with it.
Take a while.
So, but if you, and then, again, consider adding another support, and then just equally spacing them across that face. Other than that,
Railing on that porch. Is it close to 30 inches on the far end? 'Cause
That's
that would
code,
be-
yeah.
That would be a safety issue. And insurance, sometimes your inspector won't let you get away with it, even if the building guy does. If you're allowed to by code, sometimes, no, honestly.
Well, I would say that, yeah, if it's determined that you need a railing, that's an element that should be a part of this.
Right, and it's
Review.
an opportunity.
They show a railing on the back, so I would imagine that it's less than 30 inches. And anyway, they could just put some, grade it up.
Yeah.
It's only 3 steps.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so other than that, so are you okay coming back next month with these porch changes?
I mean, obviously, if you're not gonna approve it the way it is, then I think we have to, right?
Yeah.
Or is it one of those things where it's approved with a condition and Bruce can handle that during
That never
review, or-
works.
I don't know how this works.
Yeah, no.
First timer here.
So, yeah, please come back. Thank you. We're trying to make a difference, sorry. One home at a time, one building at a time. So, thank you, Dan, appreciate it.
Samples, you don't need to look at any of that?
Bring it
Let's
back
look
and
at-
we'll look at it all together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. 'Cause I think the one thing I caught out of this was that it looks to me like the siding is, on the rendering, looks lighter. I'm sorry.
Yeah, is that the siding? What you're holding
Yeah,
out?
this would be the siding. This is
Yeah, that
the,
looks
this is the misty shadow. And then this was the cedar. So if you compare them next to each other, the cedar is lighter.
So it's reversed.
Yeah, so I think that the rendering might be a little bit reversed right there, but, or maybe it's just that there's more line work in the cedar
Right.
hatching in there that makes it look darker, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
But
just,
I mean, what's probably most important is these, right?
Yeah.
You guys
Yeah.
see?
well, also, I would make sure that for what those are, that the rendering is as close to what you're intending as possible, yeah. Some kind of hurry? I think Karen's gonna share a motion to adjourn. Is there anything else, Dan?
No, I don't think so, thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
appreciate it. All right.
Motion to
Second.
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Karen, second by David, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.